And we have cricket style now. Fantastic. Okay, one more minute. We're going to see who else shows up here, but we are probably going to get started with this. Maybe I'll start moving everybody into the other room, it looks like.
Okay.
There we go. Now we're all in this room.
We're talking.
I have my chat popped back out again. I have my stream up and ready. Got hit with a little raid. We're going to get started here in just a minute. Does anybody have any questions before we get started, though?
It's just the topics you put in the group chat DM, right?
For the most part, we're going to explore a couple of different things and try to move the conversation around to a couple of different places. Again, we don't have as many people as typical, so I may drive the conversation a little bit more than usual. I wouldn't count on that 100%, though. I am going to try for the most part to let you guys go wherever we're going to go. Let me go ahead and go live. I will announce the topic, and then I'm going to give each of you guys an opportunity to introduce yourselves. I think we'll start with myself down in the bottom right-hand corner, if you don't have an issue with that, unless Brento wants to go first.
No, I'm fine. You can go first.
Perfect. I'll go ahead and go live and mute you guys for a moment, and then we'll get back into it, all right?
Okay.
Excellent.
There you go. You couldn't hear those. The stream is spared from those.
Hear what? What you said?
Today's concept, our topic that we are going to be talking about, again, is going to be money. We are going to be talking about our financial systems. We're going to be talking about the way that we operate in our bartering and trading system. I want to talk about the way that we work on a national level. I want to talk about different types of currencies between different nations. I want to talk about cryptocurrencies. I want to talk about the concept of trading oil back and forth. We used to trade gold back in the day. And my real question at the end of all of this is I'd really like to find out if it's even possible for society to function without some sort of currency. But I guess the first question that we have to come down to is, what exactly is money? What is the purpose of money in society? And we'll go from there as far as the rest of it. Again, I want to introduce all of my friends. Thank you guys all so much for joining us. We have a couple other folks that will be joining us. Oh my gosh, it looks like we have Scatafron come in and do a raid for us. I'd love to have you come and join us, by the way, Scatafron, if you'd like to come and add your opinion to ours. But I think we'll start down in the corner with myself. If you'd like to introduce yourself, myself, and share with everybody where they can meet you and where they can get your content.
Okay, I'm myself. I'm bold at the moment. I'm trying to do my usual YouTube writing kind of thing. I think you've got my links, but it's just me on YouTube and my Substack. I'll post them later on if I can be asked. But I kind of just like joining panels and stuff and having a bit of a chit chat. And what I'm hoping today is when we talk about money, that I can probably combat both the extreme sides of money, because usually people have lots of really extreme opinions on money without really having anything to back it up. And usually it's just, I'm not even talking like theory and stuff, just like basic, everyone who's rich is evil, or some weird like inverse of that, which you kind of get with the crypto dudes. So yeah, take it away, whoever's next.
Very good, myself. Thank you very much. We've got another interesting individual following him up. We have Ignoring Chat.
Howdy. I'm Ignoring Chat. I'm a streamer of sorts. You can find me on Ignoring Chat on Twitter and everything else, YouTube, the like. Money, ain't that a concept? To prepare for this panel, I listened to the Pink Floyd song on a loop a couple dozen times.
Me too.
You know, I think currency, you know, as a sort is pretty darn useful. I think it's probably expediting and helping society in a lot of ways, and attaining a lot of money is something I think to strive for, to kind of progress and make the most of life and society of this era. It's certainly it's a bag. What can I say?
Interesting. Again, go and follow Ignoring Chat. He makes some very interesting content. I can't promise that he's going to pay attention to any of the things that you type in chat, so to speak, but he is getting better at that from what I understand. The gentleman below me that's hot on the bow tie game, by the way, is that a dollar bill in there? Could you introduce yourself, friend?
It is, of course, a hundo, because of our topic. Also, I didn't know I had to blow you. Hi, hey, this is Franklin and Slash. I talk about why the law is terrifying. In order to research this panel, I just read The Wealth of Nations. Got bored today at work and, picked it up. Me and Adam were hanging out. So yeah, I'm so excited to talk about the economies of various countries. Maybe we can talk about Chinese knife currency from back in the day, the Zhao period, where people used to trade bronze knives based on an inaccessibility of currency. And so they just started trading knives, which is fun. But yeah, I did a bunch of research on boring topics, and I'm going to bring them to you. So let's do that.
Franklin, I really do appreciate it. I'm sorry that I keep adding to your reading list every week, but man, oh man, I need to get to the bottom of these things, and I need the smart people to help me along the way. Thank you again for being here. Cricket Style.
I'm Cricket Style J on Twitch and Discord. I have no particular expertise on this topic, but I'm just an opinionated person who likes to show up and spout off on whatever's on my mind at the moment, and so here I am to do exactly that.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us. Cricket Style, again, you come and share your opinion with us on a number of our panels. The reason I love having you here is because of the way that you're able to bring a little additional nuance to some of the subjects and sometimes be able to bridge some gaps that are insurmountable for some of the people that come along. And again, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us. I know that you just ended your stream, that you were up having another conversation on. You guys should really go and check out some of the things that he chats about there, because he actually gets to pick the topics there, and they're a lot more, I don't want to say interesting, but less controversial, we'll say. Finally, my last friend here, Brentobox, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Hi, guys. I'm Brentobox. I generally jump around Twitch politics and have conversations with people, and I got invited on by somebody to come and discuss money, which I think is going to be interesting. So it'll be fun.
Fantastic, fantastic. Again, folks, this is kind of an interesting topic. A lot of people like to talk about economic systems and finances and the way that these things work and the ideal system and the way that things should work. And again, we've had a variety of different systems over the years. We used to be on a gold standard back in the day. Then there was a silver standard. Now there's this whole interesting thing that's going on nowadays. So I guess maybe what I want to do is find out, like, what the heck is money? Should we all be using like Bitcoin at this point? Like, you guys go ahead. Franklin, please start us off.
Okay. So I guess we should just define our terms. Money, you can either have intrinsic value, so you could have a commodity trade system. You could have legally exchangeable for intrinsic value, so that would be your representative money. That's what we think of when we think of a gold standard or a checking system backed by a bank. And then we have nominal value, which is determined by markets or the confidence a person has in an economy, and that's what we know as the fiat currency. So that's kind of what we have currently. Something like a Bitcoin kind of hybridizes some of that, and it's not backed by a government. So likely, if we go the route of, like, for example, China's currency that is backed up by the government, that's going to be a digital currency, then that will likely destroy something like Bitcoin in order to secure itself and have, a more centralized version of that money. Although I could see people saying it could go either way. We'll probably talk about that at some point, whether it's good or bad. And yeah, I mean, there are different kinds of money. We've always traded in different ways, even in the USSR. When I was doing research, obviously, they had the ruble, and there were denominational exchanges of the ruble. But then also, they had the bostyotsk, which were little shops where they used currency from foreign countries in order to be more affluent and to buy up Western goods. So you're always going to have cool black markets. So there's going to be some kind of an economy, whatever system you have.
Okay, I was thinking a little bit about, like, why might we rather have money rather than have a barter system, and I was trying to put this in terms of, like, ancient agricultural societies, because this is where money originates from. And I guess what I was imagining was, here's the scenario where, imagine that my 7 chickens are worth the same as your 2 sheep, and like we've just roughly agreed on this. Then it's actually going to be very difficult for you to trade for one of my chickens, because I can't trade you for like a fraction of a sheep, right? I can maybe barter for something else that you own, but essentially, like, there's going to be these repeated scenarios that come up where you want to exchange for something I own, but you don't have like exactly the right thing to barter for, and so you need like a substitute. And what money is a generic substitute for all kinds of bartering, right? It's just because that scenario is going to come up repeatedly. It just exists as a go-to backup solution for times when bartering doesn't work, and it's so effective on that it has more or less replaced bartering almost entirely.
Okay. I'll get in. I get to say money is essentially trust, or it represents trust. It's a record keeping system. Essentially, it's just a way of
You are
or records that's exchanged. Did you lose me?
you're breaking up a little bit here and there for a second.
Oh, okay. Okay, sorry. Well, it's a record system. What it represents is trust or a promise of a debt in value, and it only works if it's honored. If I mean, it can essentially work if you're talking about gold. Gold has some sort of intrinsic value, right? If you were passing gold back and forth, money on paper or fiat money is essentially needs to be honored. But yeah, that's essentially what it is. Money represents trust. It's a symbol of trust.
Interesting. So bringing up, oh, sorry about that. Bringing up trust, it kind of makes me think again back to like the concept of Bitcoin, going back to barter. Like there is bartering back and forth, but you can't be sure that we're always going to get the exact same value for our goods at different times and in different situations. Whereas in a fiat currency, we have more of a stable like value for the essential good that is being transferred back and forth, again, the currency. And I like what you're saying about trust, but now we have alternative currencies that we can trade in. How should someone choose, and is it a good thing that we have multiple currencies, I guess, maybe?
I would say, I mean, multiple currencies, they're all representing the same thing. They're all representing some form of trust. But and then they just have a relationship to each other. It's essentially, if someone says, "Hey, the U.S. dollar is worth 1.2," or like $1 is worth 120. I don't know which one it is. It's probably not right. Pesos, right? Even though the units of measurement are different, or they might be different magnitudes, they all have a relationship to each other, and those relationships are all essentially they're equal to the trust invested in the system. Like if the Mexican government is making pesos, the trust in the Mexican government's economic power or relevance is equal to the number of pesos equal to the dollar, which is the trust in the U.S. government's. So that was not a very clear explanation at all. But yeah, no, they all represent the same thing, and they just have a relative value to each other. I mean, alternative systems are just different ways of keeping track of it, I think. And I was talking to someone on your server a little bit ago. I apologize, I can't remember his name. But basically just saying that money is a bridge to barter. You're still bartering. You're just keeping track of things, and you're suspending a trade over time. Like if someone has an apple orchard and someone else has a farm with cows, apples come in the fall and the calf or the cows come in the spring. If you want to trade apples for cows, there's a 6-month bridge. What are you going to do? Well, you can make the trade now, write it down on a piece of paper, and then trade the piece of paper in 6 months, and now you have a record of the trade. But that's just one trade for trade with one piece of paper. Or you can just calculate essentially through the market the relative value of everything, and have as many pieces of paper as you need to trade back and forth to calculate and trade the relative value of everything. And that's just a currency system.
Yeah. Up until now, all those currency systems were like that was also like a form of control in a way, right? Because it would everything would be centralized through like a federal reserve or federal government. Right now there's like the reserve currency, which are kind of like controlled or shaped by the IMF in a way. Do you think that's it's a fair?
Yeah, well, anyone else can jump in too, but I think being able to control the currency, being able to print it is actually extremely is the like you are the source of authority, you're the source of power if you can do that, right? Being able to limit the currencies, like a lot of kingdoms, they would say like you can only trade in this, right? They would control the currency, or just they would issue the currency, which represents the power of the throne, which before democracies or even still now represents the power of government. And so trading in the currency of the land means that it would be honored within the land, or people could rely on it. So but yeah, obviously it is a means of control if you control the currency, right? And I mean,
Yeah.
if you don't control the currency, and then there's currency, if you have a system and someone has a printer and then they're just printing up currency from their basement and then going out and flooding the country, the civilization, the land with it, they're just diluting the value of all exchange, and they're destroying the exchange rate and the trust essentially in the currency, because you can't tell what's real and what's fake. You can hand someone $10,000 that they printed out of their basement, and now the dollar is worth nothing if you can't really tell, right?
Yeah, I mean that's essentially what happened in my country. I come from the land of hyperinflation, Venezuela, and
I'm sorry.
you can see over there. I mean, like the government, of course, just like money printing machine to pay for all the social programs that they couldn't maintain once all the oil prices kicked in.
And then it
It's
all
like
collapses.
really, really precarious situation for the country in, to say the least.
So, so not to take it. Oh, go ahead. Keep finishing.
No. I was just gonna say that I mean the U.S. dollar is kind of like the reserve currency of the world right now, but we can see that kind of changing nowadays. I mean, there's more talks of kind of like Chinese the Chinese currency rising and that possibly like taking place as like the world currency, the yuan.
Yeah. And I guess not to just introduce another thing, unless someone wants to say something, but the thing with cryptocurrency, or just specifically with Bitcoin, is that no one is specifically in control of it. There's ways to manipulate it or mine it, right? So it's not like it's completely devoid of anybody doing anything, but no one is in charge of printing it. It, as for the moment, at the very least, has a set limit. There's a set number of Bitcoin, and it's issued at a certain rate, and it's released over time with the halving. And everything is completely transparent, and every interaction is mined and affirmed and is auditable on the chain. So no one's printing anything. Everyone can see where all of the money is going all the time, and no one is specifically in control of it. So essentially, its value comes from being a perfect record. It's a perfect,
well, we don't
record.
want to say it's a perfect record, because it is up against all the checkers that have to check against each other, and the checker with the most respect will usually trump other people that are checking the chain. So there have been, while it wouldn't be beneficial to do like a hack where you could modify those amounts, as we see in, for example, credit card companies, there have been ways to throw the chain when there is a question over which chain to follow, especially if there are two transactions that move in completely separate directions, which has occurred on multiple occasions.
Okay, sure. So are you saying, but is that based on consensus, or is anyone? I mean, it's all based on consensus. But are you saying that in a situation of uncertainty, they default on reputation, but not on the consensus algorithm?
It's basically taking consensus and then taking, kind of a hierarchical view of consensus is the way that they check the patterns. So if they're saying, well, let's look at how many of the consensus seems to suggest this, what is their what is their record for checking these things, will default to this chain versus another chain. And then you have two separate chains that diverge in a forest, and you have to choose one. Or else you have two competing versions of what happened. I'm not saying it's less like valuable in that sense,
No,
because
I
if it was, it could be more perfected than other monetary systems, especially, for example, if I was just dealing in cash, it's a little harder to follow the chain of where that money went and how it was used, other than serial numbers.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, I wanted to bring up, because I know a lot of people always talk about hyperinflation when they deal with monetary policy, but I rarely hear too many people discuss deflation when you're dealing with a currency that is tied to a commodity. And that was part of the problem in 1970 when you were dealing with, the American backed by gold, is that they had large periods of deflation throughout, because everything had to be tied to a specific commodity. They could mine more gold or get it from another another country, but that in itself would lead to like monetary interference, where two countries might collude to change the market value of that specific commodity. So I did want to raise that as another, thing that doesn't get discussed very much, because usually we're dealing with inflation, because almost all economists will suggest that a small, steady is this on my?
I can
Sorry,
hear
I
you.
think it's myself strugg. I think it's myself struggling with some
sorry.
of his mic.
Oh, that's
potentially.
okay. I just didn't want to. Yeah.
No,
So
please continue.
a small increase in inflation over periods of time is the best possible outcome for most economies, because if you have deflation, then companies have no interest in investing in the economy, and they can just sit and their money can accumulate in value in their treasuries, and they don't really have a reason to continue in the market, because most economic monetary plans are based on the idea that your money is going to be worth less tomorrow. And so you are incentivized to continue to invest and to keep things moving.
Yeah, to drive growth.
Mm-hmm.
I want to actually
Go ahead.
challenge the idea of intrinsic value that people are bringing up, because I think that essentially the economic value of any commodity is not actually intrinsic. I think it's always context dependent, but I still think that there is a different kind of value at work in fiat currencies. It's not that it's any less intrinsic, though. It's more just that I mean, it's two things. One is that the currency exists really only to be a medium of exchange. It isn't really used for anything else, and two, that it's under like a central authority, whereas something like gold or food really can't be, because people can just go out and find those things in the world without having to get it from a particular government.
I agree. And when you're dealing with things like diamonds, for example, we've seen, everybody always does the De Beers, controls all the diamonds, and then they hold back on the amount of diamonds in order to inflate the price. But part of the problem becomes when you have a commodity like that and there's a finite amount of it, they're actually having issues finding the amount of diamonds necessary for places like India and China that have now taken to having wedding rings and things like that. So it can be very dependent on what is the larger market, and can people fulfill that need of the quote unquote commodity that they've chosen as the valuable one.
So with this kind of line of logic, and we've like kind of established that there is like an interconnected web that is occurring where there is a trust in the different systems. We talked a little bit about what happened with the Venezuelan peso and the collapse of the economic system there, kind of, and what happens within an individual system. But what happens to the system as a whole if something happens to one of these individual currencies? I don't know if you guys are paying attention to what's going on with Bitcoin right now, but man, oh man, I don't know which direction it's going to go next, but so far it's been straight down.
Probably going down.
What does that mean for the rest of the crypto market or for the greater economy as a whole? Does this like put into question any of this trust that we have when one of the pieces of this system fails, whether we're talking about like an entire national entity like the National Bank of Venezuela or the National Bank of insert any country there. I don't want to pick on Venezuela just because Juan's here. But again,
pick away.
like
They deserve it.
what does the collapse of any one part of this system do to the whole, so to speak? Oh, and welcome, by the way, Indigo Foxtrot. Indigo Foxtrot, if you'd like to, please take a moment and introduce yourself. Maybe give your credentials on why you're here. And again, our general topic, where we've gotten to try to catch you up to this point, is that we're trying to discuss the different types of currency, whether or not we can have a system without a currency, what currency is as a whole, and we've kind of gotten into the fact that currency is like a trust that people have in the system that they're placing in a system. Correct me if I'm mistaken, anyone? Fantastic. Again, if you'd like to please introduce yourself, let everybody know who you are, where they can find you, or what you're doing here anyway.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Of course, you sound great.
Yes, I'm Indigo Foxtrot. So I guess my background is in international politics and business. I don't know. I don't know what else you want me to introduce about myself, but
That's funny.
yeah, I am for the most part a capitalist. I have some interesting views on. I think recently what I was really studying that was as far as currency goes is there's a guy in South Africa who has started this movement called Ubuntu, and his whole thing behind that is that money is it's really just it's a form of control. And so he has started building these communities around not having no money, and it's just not so much a barter system, but the communities are based on input. So it's like, if you have a skill, like you're a doctor or something, you come and you are able to use everything else in the community based on not based on your input. Like that's just you come in, you're the doctor, and everybody can come to the doctor for free, and then you can do everything else for free. And so that's something interesting that maybe you guys want to talk about. I don't know.
If anyone else has anything they want to say on that, they can answer. I guess it's kind of like related to what you just asked, and this was something that somebody asked earlier. You were asking about whether this is the big question of whether there's a society without money is possible or something. And I think the answer to that is you just have to look to anything that we currently do and that functions in society that doesn't use money. And the only reason that it functions and we don't use money is because we don't have to keep track of it, because that trust is implicit, or like the results are something that is just self-evident, right? So anything you don't have to keep track of, anything that there's no trust or exchange necessary between, is a society. There's something in society where money is not necessary. So the question is there anything in society? Sorry, what were we saying?
Oh, I think that we're getting an echo from Indigo Foxtrot. I don't know if you have some headphones maybe, or if you can turn your audio down, but your speakers and your microphone are feeding back on each other. Push to talk might be a good option to look into. Continue, Brento, I'm sorry.
Sure. I'll just try and wrap it up and just say that the only way a society would ever function without money is if it had perfect trust. And there was no necessity, even through human error, to have an outside record-keeping system. So that's the only way that, ultimately a record-keeping system is what money is. So only if that was completely unnecessary would you need, or would you not need it. So, and then regards to what you were talking about with the Ubuntu, that sounds kind of like a socialized healthcare, but it sounds like I don't necessarily know how it's paid for or managed or recorded or tracked or anything like that. So,
wouldn't you say, if we were going to go down the crypto route, couldn't you have a recording system that perfectly recorded everybody's individual actions, but didn't ascribe in value to it in the circumstance that they could be either punished for not fulfilling said duty, or not having some kind of requirement where you did X number of hours, let's weigh that against some other value of a good, for example, that you're buying?
Are you saying where you don't use that?
Yeah, so I'm proposing if you had a system for record keeping that
Mhm.
was tied to, the consensus of a computing system, for example,
Mhm.
and then you didn't ascribe some kind of value to the individual action. So you didn't say, well, you're a doctor, you had to go for more education, you had to do these things. We're going to pay you a greater value for your service than the sanitation worker that is transporting garbage. And if we didn't weigh that
Sure.
on that level, you could have the same thing as money, but just without the hierarchical
So
nature of said system.
what is the value of keeping the record? Because to keep a record just on a blockchain takes time and money and energy, but even in real life it takes time and money and energy, even with a pen and paper, right? So what's the value, what's the utility of the record? What is it measuring, and why are you keeping it if it's not going to be used to track or know any what is the value of
Well,
the
I guess
record in
it
that
would
regard?
still be used for tracking or knowing what people are doing, one would think. It just wouldn't be used as, this person did X and therefore they deserve food, for example.
Okay. I mean, I still you could say it's tracking what they're doing, but I'm asking you why.
So that I
What's
guess
the
generally the
utility?
community would be aware of the actions of its citizenry.
Okay. But
It's
could
the
it be
same
used
reason why
against
we
you?
bill, like in a law firm, for example. That's my experience.
Okay.
We bill in a
Mhm.
law firm not just to say, here's how much value we're adding, which is one benefit, but also so that the person can track what you're doing. Because if you could do a project very quickly, then some law firms will charge, for example, a bonus for doing something really quickly. So in this
Mhm.
case, it wouldn't be you did your project very quickly and therefore you get X. It would just be you did X amount of work. We are aware
Wait.
of how much work someone did, so that people, I guess, don't feel the human nature of this person's lazy and this other person is not.
Why shouldn't they feel that though?
Like, yes. The reason that we would want some kind of parity between people is so that you couldn't naturally collect all the resources in one place and say, I therefore deserve this more than everybody else,
Yeah,
unless you're proposing some kind of monetary meritocracy.
it's an answer to the tragedy of the commons scenario, right? Like was somebody just trying to exploit the system selfishly, and so I actually want to echo Brento's opinion. I think he's got the right idea with that it's about trust, because if you have a small group of people that all trust each other that won't abuse the system, then you wouldn't need to track them, and you really wouldn't need currency either. Everybody could just share all their stuff and be basically communist. But and you can do that with your friends and family, but you can't really do that in a society with millions of people where you don't know everybody. You can't trust everybody to not abuse the system, where the tragedy of the commons scenario is going to occur.
On that note, yeah, it's kind of like a utopian idea, and it works in small groups, but on a larger scale, it's kind of like that's going to just turn into communism. But there's and I can't really speak to this, like I haven't looked into it too much, but there is a theory called social credit. I don't know if any of you guys have heard about it, but it's basically a way to do that on a global scale to where the GDP of a country is based on not on its, financial stuff, which is all kind of made up, but on its actual productivity.
Hmm. And I know I've heard these types of things. Essentially, I think money is essentially a social credit system. Like
Mhm.
that's what money is. It is a social credit system. Now it can be manipulated, and that credit can be false, but that credit can easily be manipulated and false too if you're not basing it on money and you're basing it on individual interpretation or good deeds. Like, well, you're not getting money, but you're getting social credit. Like,
It just seems
you
like
mean
money
you
with
like
extra
me or something?
steps.
Am I popular? Like, you know.
Well, either the proposal is almost like we're just going to have two parallel currencies, and maybe there's some merit to that, but I think you're right. It is basically just another currency.
Yeah. I don't know. I not to strike it down or too much, but I know it's like in the ideal communist utopias or something where they've been tried and they're eliminating currency, they're eliminating free market, right? All that you have left, if you don't have any kind of competition or free market, is social credit. And what will happen is then people will attempt to just start manipulating society or information or perceptions. And I know in some instances, I think this was in China, that during the communist regimes, they would come and they would say, hey, so how much food did your farm produce? And they would lie, because they would say, well, we produced this much food, because they didn't want their credit to fall, because they don't have any money anyway. It's just their reputation, and they have to save face, and it's reputation saving. So then they would give over more than they had, and then people would starve. And you'd say, well, who's going to die for the reputation? But that's all you have, because you have no other means. So and so where social credit or social hierarchy or reputation replaces something currency and measurable, then that is just the next thing that starts getting manipulated and inflated. You have to inflate that now to try
Can
to
you
Wouldn't
get
you
a
say that
social
in
credit
both? Oh, go ahead.
Can you get a social credit loan? Is there a way you can get a social credit loan? I'm
You have
just
to get
curious.
that from someone. No, you have to get that from someone who has a good reputation, and they have to vouch for you.
Oh shit. Not sure if that's gonna be able to happen. Anyway, carry on.
Wouldn't you say that in all systems it just matters how much regulation and whether the regulation is just seized by the various means that the currency is manipulated? Because obviously, in most of those systems, you either had a completely centralized version of regulation, or even in our current system, there isn't a free market anywhere that's a fully free market. Everything has to have elements of regulation, or else there is just mass exploitation, or people can't compete. I mean, if we think about like 1824 UK, when they tried to have, England, when they tried to have a completely free market, it only lasted a very short period of time before they had to make adjustments to not allow places like India to compete, to deal with Japanese competition, etc. So you're always going to have mass regulation under any system. And so isn't that always just a level of trust coming from the government when you're dealing with any currency?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, and there's another step in that, is that if there's no currency, and it's just social reputation, like the one usually in those systems, and this is how it works too, is that the one social reputation you cannot damage is the government, because they're the source of the government. So there's no criticizing the government, and that leads to totalitarianism, because no one can ever say the government's wrong. You can't damage that, right? So that's another just terrible outcome.
Really, excuse me, concerning, I guess, worries about government control in the case of, like, I guess, a government issued social credit system. It seems to me like there's better reason to believe that there would be that sort of problem on like a social credit system which can at any point be revoked than it would be on like a currency which is stored in like banks and in people's wallets. And so if you want to say something like a social credit score system which is recorded exclusively by the government and is entirely held by the government is going to be as bad, or sorry, is going to be better than some system where people actually own the currency, and specifically it's not going to be any worse along like a governmental control access. That feels like a strong claim.
Yeah.
That feels like a sort of claim that you'd need to supply like a very large amount of evidence or reason to believe.
I guess if I was going to combat that, I would think about like the USSR and the banks of like the Stroink and like the various banks that were all like centrally controlled. I mean, you can have the same thing under an SDR. You can have the same thing under any centralized style system where you're determining value. Like most places will, if there's some kind of currency that you can hide from the government, or some other market that's outside of a particular government that you can use as a currency, under the table, that's the way people will go. So I think there would be a central currency, and there'd be the ability to shut down people's accounts. But I assume there would quickly form a variety of black markets that people would use to trade to undermine whatever central system you would create.
Yeah, sorry, does anybody here like actually support like a government social credit score currency?
I don't. I don't.
So on the opposite of that, and I think, the ideas behind, that Ubuntu and the social credit is really all about decentralizing the banking system and international banks because of the control that you guys are talking about. And I think the question is just, how do you actually implement that?
I guess I'm kind of confused. But that's on me. I don't really understand what people are saying.
If you're thinking about like social credit, that usually is tied to an individual. The thing that people like about cash is that it has not necessarily anonymity, but it has a greater, like it is less tied to you individually. So, for example, if I go to the store and I pay for something on my credit card, that's a very clear transaction with my name attached to it. When I used to do criminal law, that was a fun way to catch people, is they'd go pay for their thing they were about to do a crime with using their credit card. And then you just track that and say, well, they bought the gas that they used to burn down the building at 9:59, and here's the record of them on the camera. All of that connects and shows their actions. So that would be a state example of tracking someone's behavior. If you have something like, for example, what China's trying to do with its like currency that would be in a digital form, it is not directly tied to an individual's name, although I'm sure there's going to be a variety of ways that it will be tracked outside of that. But at least the idea would be that you'd be digitizing a currency that would continue to exist in a currency format, as opposed to as a check or a credit that is tied to a representative of money, and therefore is easier to track by government entities.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really quick. I don't understand how is China's social credit score system a currency?
It isn't. What they're moving towards is digital currency. That would be like, there are two prongs of different approaches to their monetary policy. A digital currency, as opposed to a credit score that is mapped onto an individual, is the thing that people seem to be trying to push right now, as opposed to the credit score, which would be directly tied to that individual, and therefore would be easier if you were trying to do the argument about shutting down someone's ability to purchase. Although we're already doing that in Canada, and it's done everywhere for terrorist transactions and/or transactions that are over a certain amount of money.
So the reason that I've kind of let the conversation delve down this path, where technically like social credit in China isn't directly related to people's finances. We're not spending social credit back and forth when we're Chinese citizens. But the reason that I did want to go into this a little bit potentially is because even in a capitalist society, there is, I feel, potentially some sort of a variation in the way that we view people socially when we learn how much money they make per year or how much money they have in general. And there does seem to be some sort of social credit even in a capitalist society. And so I don't mind considering where these two concepts may be intertwined. So maybe to try to come back to the capitalist financial system, is there any way in which we kind of give people social credit based upon their earning power, potential, or past achievement of themselves or their ants? Does having more money or making more money make people better people in capitalist societies?
Like, I think it makes them more respected, probably.
Yeah, yeah, it gives you status for sure. Like, and that is a very sought after thing. That it's a very attractive quality, to have, like, to be able to accrue like a significant amount of money, especially if that is like self-made to a degree, is seen as like you're a very productive person. You're a very you're capable of making a lot from nothing or from little, and that can be a very, very good signifier for you as a productive member of society and as a potential partner as well if we want to go down that road.
It represents like your value or your potential, right? Your ability, some sort of ability to interact with the world or to accumulate something or to serve a purpose, right? It's a reflection. It's recognized as like a reflection of like an attribute of something about you that is valuable, that allows you to do this or understand how to do this or be connected to something where this is possible. So yeah, definitely.
Okay. Does anybody here disagree about anything right now? I mean, I guess I'm not like humongously against agreement panels. I've argued for them before.
Sorry, state the points again, because I think I disagree with some of it. I'm just trying not to put in. I don't like money, but I'm just sort of, I just kind of don't think it's really a good indicator for a lot of things. I think it's basically just material, and it often gets obfuscated. Like, just because you have a lot of material doesn't mean you're a good or bad person. It's just like you just have a lot of something. It's like could mean anything for all I fucking know. So
yeah, we should get all the money and put it in a big hole and
Mm.
set it on fire.
All right, you sound like the Joker. You sound like the Joker.
Mhm.
About sending a message, okay, myself.
Yeah, exactly.
Literally
Yeah,
is
I
about
mean,
sending a message.
I'll go with myself on this. I think it's an artificial and kind of a stupid way of measuring someone's ability. If you were going to measure it, for example, I might value someone's decision to do a job that I can't do because it's extremely difficult or there's a bunch of work that goes into it. We obviously think of, doctors as highly skilled and therefore deserving of their paycheck. Or we could think of some Twitch streamers that are sitting and making some mild jokes about car pussies. And
deserving of their paycheck.
We could value that person, say that they create a lot of social utility. But I don't know if everybody on this panel would agree with that. I think that a lot of the time, what people throw their money behind is indicative of their belief. You can see how many, televangelists are quite richer than everybody here, and what value they added to society might be rather minimal if we were to weigh it out.
I don't know. I think in general, money is like a good tracker of added value to society. There are cases where I don't think money is a good metric of value, like in the case of animal, like meat. I think that's a bad indicator of value in that case. But I think generally that people want something is pretty good as an indicator for like the idea that that thing is good.
I know, but the problem here, what we're getting is we're getting like subjective value. So it's like, okay, so some people clearly really like TV relevant, whatever the fucking, however you say it, TV religious people. Some people clearly really like them because they're still popular and I think they're still around. I mean, Scientology is still a thing and shit like that. So it's like clearly they have value, but that's subjective. So we just get into like basically it's just money equals how popular you are, essentially.
But it's
and then
kind
What
of more
measure of
specific.
value? What measure of value wouldn't be subjective?
I don't know, like meters, volume.
Meter, like as in when I say value, I mean goodness.
I think perhaps what's going on is that it's not just a subjective value as evaluated by society broadly, but it's the subjective value of the thing to the people who want it most is pretty much what the monetary value of a commodity is.
Well, no, but we're getting confused with like monetary value in terms of like how much something is worth, and then we're getting it in terms of like how much something is worth like morally, and how much something's like, okay, so I clearly value like breathing. So if the fucking all the world's oxygen gets depleted, then I'm gonna like oxygen tanks are gonna rise up. But then it's like Hassan's fucking subscriber value is still gonna be like as dog shit as it is now, as it is in that like oxygenated universe. It's like there's two different levels of value are going on here, and it's just kind of like getting the two. I think we're getting them mixed up, and I'm definitely getting them mixed up. I can at least say that I'm getting them mixed up. So
you're not actually.
Okay.
Welcome in, by the way, Tiberius. Thank you
Hi.
very much for joining us. It's fantastic to have you here.
Welcome.
I'm sorry again for being a little bit slow on the invites and invitations. I've been struggling. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, absolutely great to have me. And like, this is actually kind of what I studied in. I studied in economics, and learning like why price works and how money works and all this is absolutely integral to what I do. So here, I've got a lot I can say to this. Just from what I've listened to the last 10 minutes. So here's what I'll get on the last things that have been said. There is a social value. There is an economic value. They tend to go tandem to a degree, but they are separate. And there's 1,000 reasons to why that is. And you can see people who will take their social credit or their social value and they can turn that into monetary value and vice versa. This is literally like most social influencers of today. But when it comes down to it, the last 200 years has largely been in economics about how do we change, or I'm sorry, I'll rephrase this. How do we take the differences in what we see morally and what we want morally and fuse that into economics in a cohesive way? And unfortunately, that has turned out to be generally a disaster on almost every front. The left originally took that and they got the Soviet Union. The right took that and they got fascism. We're trying that more now with like a kind of a hands in, hands out with the social democracies and what people call it like mixed economy capitalism. No one's really been super happy about twining moral and like social values into economics because it tends to break economics. So I know that's a big thing I just dropped on the table there, but I can weed that out as we get into it.
I actually would really like to talk to you about that.
Yeah.
So when you say that the project, I'm going to paraphrase you.
Sure.
When you say that the project of integrating morality with economics has failed, do you mean that it's failed in the sense that a lot of 21st century attempts to like manifest good economic systems have failed? Or do you mean to say something like that when economists try to study the economy, the integration of morality actually causes them to like not understand the world properly?
That's actually a really good question, and both are a little true. So the mistake that I would say that the 20th century made is that we tried to gear out our economic systems to get what we morally wanted them to be. Um, a lot of that didn't work out very well. That's why you like literally the most libertarian minded aspects of societies tended to win is because they kind of went with a more amoral approach. I'm not going to say that was exclusive because you had like the Western democracies got incredibly authoritarian, economically speaking, during like World War II, particularly during the World Wars. But then you have like this weird mismatching where sometimes you have like incredibly fervent, very controlled economies, particularly like early or South Korea, early Japan in the 50s and 60s that take off. But others you have far more laissez-faire systems that are working out very well. So I'm not going to openly say like anyone won that one. The problem is that when anyone started with morality first and then drove economic decisions, they just tended to make a society that was broken. 21st century has kind of changed in that regard because everyone's kind of figured out, all right, start with what you want to do from the economic front and then move that into the moral front. So this is where people do example social democracy where they're like, all right, we need to make sure that these people are fed. So how do we economically move the resources and the capital and the allocations to actually get that to happen? It's been more successful, but as you can tell, whether you're in North America or the United States or in Europe, is that people are still not 100% okay with it. There's a problem though. Almost everywhere that we know how to do economics, whether it's capitalism, feudalism, socialism, fascism, any of these things, they all have a ticking clock on them now because we're used to having a world that is for more people, trying to get more resources, trying to satisfy that demand. But this century, we will see the human population for the first time since the Black Death shrink, and we don't know how to deal with that.
So you talked a fair bit about how it was a problem for societies that tried to be morally minded first and then economically minded second, And I guess the idea is that by not understanding descriptively how the world was and beginning by jumping to some desire that they had for the world to be, they made bad decisions about like how to structure their economies, which sounds plausible to me. But and this isn't a like criticism, I just want to hear more about it. How do you think that descriptively economists who think about the moral like morality have failed?
If I was going to put it in a descriptive, I'll put it in this regard, and this is the only answer I can give to you, because it kind of sucks because everyone's trying to get to a something that they're happy with, and they're just not working. But when you look through the world with a moral lens, is that you do look through it at a lens, and it distorts certain things from a more objective viewpoint. In the regards that I would say this. I think to do economics well, at least from the base where you understand supply and demand, even the most basic or economic structures, you kind of have to look at them from an amoral lens and then be like, all right, we don't like the outcome that we see now. How do we change the math to get there? And I think that's the lesson that's been learned. The problem overall is that when you say, all right, inequality, I'm going to be very vague here, but like if you just say inequality is immoral, if that is part of your moral framework, that's a hell of a lens to look at the world through, because you can look at systems like almost every system in human history has been incredibly unequal. We call this kleptocracy, in regards that, people talk about the 1%. Yeah, that's actually really normal. You look at feudalism, was even worse. You look at Latin America today, it's not the 1%, it's the 0.01% that controls most of those countries. So if you look at the world and you're like, hey, we need to make it a lot more equal, you're fundamentally going to look at almost every economic system that you've ever seen and conclude they're all immoral or broken or evil.
But it sounds like you're saying that they're moralizing not only their prescriptions but also their analysis, where maybe you might have less of a problem with it if they did an amoral analysis and then applied moral prescriptions to it. Is that right?
Yeah, that's actually in a different way exactly what I've been saying. I think that was the lesson that people kind of walked away from the 20th century with, is that they're trying to do the amoral analysis first and then go, all right, how do I get to where I'm morally comfortable from here? I don't think that journey is done. The problem is by the time we finally get it together, I think the game's going to change for everybody, which sucks.
I don't understand why sometimes, like, for example, like some like a more left-leaning person can look at like a kleptocracy or look at the region like South America and see like corruption just like being ubiquitous and say that there needs to be more state control and more kind of an expanded public sector, when clearly like that is part of what's driving some of their economic problems. I feel like people a lot of the time kind of try to apply the same solution broadly to like every country, whereas like maybe every country has like a particular set of like policies that would work best for it. And I guess because I see that happening like cyclically with South American countries, like obviously there is like intervention from other countries and stuff that has affected the region, but we kind of fall into this cycle of like military juntas and like dictatorships and either very left wing or right wing authoritarians taking control. And I wonder what's something that can help kind of break out of that. And if there's kind of if that is something that the region can look forward to. I'm throwing that out there because I got a lot of.
I'm not left wing, so I don't want to answer
here.
that first, but I will give my take on that later.
Sure. I would only the only thing that springs to my mind is if there's any underlying social structure that just is always present, even through left wing, right wing political swings, even to those extremes. Whatever's underlying that, like if there can be a strong framework or groundwork that survives each one, and then from that, if you can get like a strong economic base or social base built up so that it's not, falling over and it's weathering all storms. That's the only thing that I think that from that could arise a more stable economic and political system. So there has to be something before that.
I think when it comes to exporting institutionalism or exporting the idea of something like nationalism, there is, or like nationalizing sectors. The problem is that you are applying a solution to an outside problem without looking at, as you've highlighted, the people, the groups that are involved, without a history of building up those institutions. So, I mean, when you see a lot of overthrow, you're going to see destruction of institutions. You're going to see people destroy constitutional documents. You're going to see massive upheaval when it comes to things that allow for stability. And when we're looking across economies, stability is a generally good thing when it comes to growing an economy. You also have to factor in, for South America and other countries, like trade with the rest of the world, whether it's cut off, whether tariffs are imposed, whether or not a country is putting specific conditions onto someone, like onto a country, that's limiting their ability to trade and to sell the supplies that they have at either a massively increased rate, or without building up that productivity that's necessary for that particular state to function.
I'll get in on this and say that I'll take the left wing part first, and then I'll take Latin America. I think the left wing has traps in the same way that the right wing does, that whether it be their moral axioms or their proclivities, is that they fall into some traps. Some of them actually help and some of them hurt. I think this one actually hurts a little bit in the regards that I think correctly, the left usually looks at the state as an institution that enforces the will of a society. That it's basically the physical manifestation of the society, and it's the like manifestation of the instrument of society. Actually, I think they're right on that one. The problem is that they kind of look through the lens that if it isn't done through the state, it like isn't going to be cohesive. It's not going to be enforced properly, and that's where I kind of disagree. Now, if anyone thinks that's a straw man, feel free to hit tag that. When it comes to Latin America in general, is what we generally find with these revolutions is that they are not the what we would call a more pro-liberal revolution, in the regards that we actually expand both economic and civil rights to most people. Is that more often or not, they're coups. And there's 1,000 reasons why we can get into that. But what it tends to be is that you have a very oligarchic structure, or an aristocratic structure, whichever you want to prefer. They get thrown out in some kind of revolution. Most of the time, it isn't really a populist revolution, even though it's marketed to be that. And they just replace the old leadership with new leadership, and you've got the same problem that you originally had, where 99.9% of people can't get jack, and all you've done is just change out the leadership. And that's 90% of all the coups within Latin America for the last 150 years. It sucks, but they are stuck in a cycle. In the regards that when the Western world, we're talking the United States, Canada, and like most of Western Europe, when we had revolutions, some of them were horrible in the regards that we made them more autocratic, more authoritarian. You talk about the Nazis in particular. But in other revolutions, like the French Revolution, they literally tried to kill anyone who was a leader or an aristocrat, to the point where they broke the fundamental boundaries of where it was, to where you had the Napoleonic Code come out. In the regards that every person was pretty much given an opportunity because it was so chaotic. Now, obviously, there's a happy medium in there. It looks like the Brits and the Americans probably did it best. But you have to revolutionize your society under strain. And it's weird because Latin America doesn't really have that. The societies are, if you will, I'm going to make a judgment here, they're kind of broken because they haven't adapted to anything that we would say in the last 200 years is more modern. They're very feudalistic in some regards. The problem is that they don't have any external competition to really fix that. Because if you look at Latin America, it's the most peaceful place, if we're talking about war, on the planet. South America, through all of its history, is the most peaceful continent in existence. There's been hardly ever any wars there, aside from a few brushfire wars that were literally done in a couple of months. it's
outside of like
weird.
the independence wars and stuff like that, for sure. Yeah, I get what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I think the
So-
region doesn't have a lot of like the social maturity, as well. Like it's never like developed economically to the point where um you have like a really robust infrastructure anywhere. You have like a thriving like small business sector outside of like a few countries like maybe Brazil or Argentina, where it's a little better.
There's a
But
Go ahead. Sorry.
it's like it's always been like on its way there, and it seems like it seems like people should be leaning towards like liberalizing stuff, in the sense that for that region to be able to kind of to get ahead economically, because outside of that it's kind of just like dooming the region like more to that kind of cyclical
I largely agree with that,
Oh.
but I want to split something real quick. When it comes to like a number of social aspects, I do agree with you that they're I want to call it just regressive. Example: property rights and patent rights in Latin America are abysmal by almost everyone's
yeah.
definition. So I'm not going to support that. The other side that Latin America does not have going for it is not their fault, is the infrastructure. If you look at North America, it's relatively flat. You've got the Great Plains, the Mississippi Basin, the Atlantic coastline. You can walk there or build roads pretty easily. If you look at Latin America, and I'm talking literally everything from Mexico, pretty much all the way down to Argentina, it's very hilly. It's very mountainous. It's very rugged. And then if you actually have a flat place, flat place, it's usually either a desert or it's a rainforest, or a little bit of both, ironically enough, aka the Cerrado. The only place that's even half decent from an economic point of view is what we call the La Plata down there, where Argentina and Uruguay come together. But that's literally about it.
Concerning what you said about not being left-leaning, when you say that you're not left-leaning, do you mean to say that you have a problem with like left-leaning candidates in the United States?
Okay, so that's a whole thing to unpack. I'll put it this way: I never get along with left wingers, but I do get along with right wingers on a social level. But they don't look at me as a right wing, and I piss everybody off because I'm just that guy. I don't agree. I don't think that I'm left wing in any regard, because I don't think my morals really frame up with them very well. And this kind of was talking about the moral ends earlier. I don't really believe in equality. Fairness is a thing, but it's a fairness to a point. And like, I'll even put it this way. Right wingers to me tend to be far more driven towards meritocracy, hierarchy, authority, and I would call it like order. Left wingers have a big thing about quality and fairness, and I can pick up the fairness part, but the equality thing just is completely, I'm not gonna say alien to me, but it's alien in the regards that I it's not that I don't understand it, I just don't appreciate it. And I never, when I look at a fundamental level of almost 90% of what most left wingers actually advocate for, it's not that I look at them like, oh, I can never stand for that. It's like, I get where you're going for, I might even vote for it. But more often than not, I don't like the moral framework of where it comes from. And when you take it to the nth degree, I see where that goes, and it
Sorry,
scares
what
the
is your
hell out of
issue
me.
of equality? I don't really understand.
It's a joke to me. It like the actual
A
notion
joke.
that the actual notion to me that humans have this idea that that one person is equal to another is ridiculous. No, you are an individual. You are made up of an entirely different composition than the person next to you. You are going to exhibit traits that is going to be positive for you and negative for you. So if you want to make this the most roundabout thing possible, people are equally unequal, but actively thinking like people are going to be treated pretty normally and the same, to the point where it's like, hey, we all should just get a fair shake in life. And I'm like, are you serious? There's a level where this...
But haven't most people moved to a version of equity where the idea is that you're responding to that person's individual needs, as opposed to saying, well, you're equal, you have to do the same work. I'm sorry that you're disabled, or I'm sorry that you happen to have been born a certain way.
Make all the iPads.
Like, I think most people generally, if they're on the left, are more of the view of like, well, you can have considerations of equality in the sense that like people aren't starving and in a bad situation health wise, but I'm sure there are lots of people who aren't complete flat no hierarchies. I think there's some anarchists and people who are close to that, but yeah, I think people generally just don't. They aren't like everybody is equal. You are blob number 6 anymore.
Yeah, I'm not going to openly just be like, oh, all left wingers or anything like that. I'm not that guy. But and there's also a level where it's a spectrum. You've got people who are crazy far left radicals, and you got people who are crazy far right radicals. And then when you get to the center, there's people who absolutely hate those people and disagree with them. I am constantly seen as anti-right because I'm constantly bashing on Christian nationalism. It's like I'm like, hey guys, you actually have my moral core, but you completely take it and flip it on its head, and I hate everything that you're doing because of it. So there's a level there where I don't get along with most of the right now because they're insane and they keep being anti-intellectual, and it's driving me crazy. This can really quickly be a morals and values conversation. As much as I like to talk about me, I don't think that's the subject here. So if we can get back to money, that would be kind of cool.
So again, I am kind of interested in the way that we do like attribute value to different individuals, and if we can find a way to have a society that doesn't function with money. The last time that I shared anything to try to get anybody back on topic, I mentioned that we wanted to talk about cryptocurrencies and the fact that if any one economic system in our interwoven chain of economic systems fails, how does this affect the trust in the economic system as a whole, or in the way that we trade commodities? And again, eventually we started talking about the way that we attribute values to individuals based upon the number of commodities that they've obtained, and whether or not this was an appropriate thing for people to kind of be betting on commodities in different forms. Cryptocurrency as a whole, though, we've seen a lot of different individual crypto coins jump up. People run various crypto dump scams. And again, Bitcoin is doing an amazing thing at the moment, so to speak. And I'd like to get a little bit more information on people's thoughts about cryptocurrencies versus like strong dedicated fiat currencies that are attached to, I don't want to say the US dollar specifically, but we also have the Chinese yuan. We had the Venezuelan peso, and that affected the international system. And that's kind of where I'd like to look at with this is, what do we think's going on with crypto? Is it good? Is it bad? Should we do this?
I really want to start this one.
Okay.
I think that the opinion on cryptocurrencies and blockchain generally is really negative. But the more I've looked at it, I've just had this strong sense of indifference. I see no reason to think that blockchain is like really bad or like strongly negative in any way. And insofar as cryptocurrencies are bad, they're bad just because people use them to scam other people. I don't actually really see anything like innately wrong with them. Anyway,
I
that's
just
my
think
opinion.
I just think crypto's in a very early stage. Like it's been around since the internet. It's like it's not post internet, but you know what I mean. And what I think about cryptos, it's basically, Esperanto. I don't know how many people know that here.
Yeah.
But I see like Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is almost like the money version of that. And now Esperanto is, I don't want to say failed, but it's definitely not like going anywhere right now. And I kind of see crypto as sort of going down the same route as Esperanto, as it's trying to be this universal language. But ultimately, I think everyone's going to want to use it in a different way and trying to make one thing that's super universal, despite every single country using money in a different way and having a different cultural appreciation of money. I think it's just going to kill Bitcoin. That's a bit of a bold statement, but I just think I don't know. I think it's good, but I don't know where it's going to go. So.
Anybody here have like a really strongly negative opinion of crypto?
Go ahead.
I probably have the most strongly negative opinion of crypto, and it's not because I like openly hate crypto. I actually really appreciate what they were trying to do with it. I don't, in the world that I see coming, just right down the corner, is that it's not going to work. So let me outline what I mean by that. Crypto is built upon the idea that instead of having a fiat currency that is mandated by a central dictate of usually a government, is that this was going to be basically a free open source. Anyone could participate as long as you had an internet connection. And that's a lovely idea. The problem is twofold. Number one is that, excuse me, I'm looking for names. Myself put the first part up, and that people want to use it for anything and everything, and that's why it's actually doing well right now, is that it has far more of a dynamics of a Ponzi scheme, and that more people are getting the attention of it, more people are buying into it, but they're not using it for the transition of goods and services in a normal economic system. If that doesn't change, crypto's doom. The other side of that is that even if you get past number one, I think that's the easy part, is what happens in a world where the internet isn't open source, isn't secure in the way that it has been. And looking at what the Russians have done, looking at China or what they've been doing this year, and looking at how fragile some Western countries are looking now, I'm actually predicting an era where the internet is far less inclusive and far less easy to access. And in that environment, crypto pretty much loses 70% of its value out of the gate. I think it can exist. I think it can work, but it's going to be very limited, and it's going to get drawn back exclusively.
No, I disagree with that. I don't think that's the issue. I feel like, especially with Tor and other like proxies and especially Rise and VPN shit, I don't think that would be an issue. I think the issue will just be that sort of like people not finding a proper use for it. I think people will always get around government censorship. I just don't think the government's powerful enough to censor like something which the human, I don't want to say spirit, but human voice. I think there's a lot of ways people get around censorship now. It's just
Wait, guys, really quick.
Mhm.
I lied a little bit. My opinion on cryptocurrency is like I think blockchain is probably a bit silly, and I think cryptocurrency is a bit silly. We're all so boring, and I mean me included. It's just like we don't disagree about very much of anything. So I said something inflammatory and hoping people would disagree, and I'm like, what the heck?
Oh, I think crypto is revolutionary. I'm super fucking positive on crypto. I was just letting you guys speak.
Oh,
Yeah,
I think people focus too much on the bad parts of crypto, and then they don't maybe focus on the utility of being able to, send money across regions without any sort of like government interference or government regulation. Like for me, for example, I live in Argentina, and the way I send money back home to my parents in Venezuela is always like through crypto or even living in Venezuela when there was like kind of really high inflation. I always was able to have that, at least that freedom. I don't think it was technically legal, like under the restrictions that were in place, but so long as I had the internet connection, I was able to kind of put money out somewhere that wasn't like under control of the government, and I see that utility continuing to be like relevant in the future going forward. Just
Well, that
a
was
little crypto wallet.
That was what they were talking about with the Chinese digital currency and the like. If people did integrate through a currency like that, and again, that would be the government controlled version as opposed to the more open sourced
A
version of it.
centralized.
Yes,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, effectively, the idea would be to remove the bank draft fees, because overdraft fees are something like 13 billion. Like it's so much money per year, just in these the money going back. I do think crypto's got some interesting applications. I know. I read this piece by the ever hated Nick Land about cryptocurrency being, or the blockchain specifically, being an example of the separation of deontological time versus space. And the fact that ever since Einstein, there has been no separation between like quantum time and space, whereas a blockchain is just a series of inputs. So it does allow you to separate out time from space within a particular area. Now, obviously, it's like very, very, very small increments of a thing occurring. So it's not observable, as opposed to like, there's no full separation, but it gets as close to that idea of separating out those two concepts. So yeah, I think like any technological innovation, there's going to be lots of different applications that we have for the tech, whether it's going to be this magical currency boom. Obviously, like Bitcoin rose in prominence because of the ability to legally trade with it, and then eventually some companies in China using it to back some of their corporate assets. So I mean, I assume that's kind of the cycle of how this will be applied. People will find limited uses for the tech, and it won't be some kind of like solve for the masses.
I think it's probably going to be a revolution in the way that people communicate and interact with each other. I think it's going to be as revolutionary as the internet, and things are going to occur that people haven't even accounted for yet. I think people are going to find new ways to interact and exchange information globally in unrestricted ways that are also non-manipulable. Like a lot of people are like, well, it's all a scam. Well, no, you can't. You could participate in a scam, but someone could also do something solid that is consistent, that is not a scam. And the more that happens, I think we're going to see it have a greater and greater effect and be more and more. It's not just going to be incorporated into everyday life. I think it's going to be like a source of value and knowledge and information and innovation that unless you are taking part in it in some way, I don't think you're going to be able to avoid it. Just like the internet, you could be that person who, 2010 is like, I never learned email. Like, okay, great. Go take a course at the library because you need to. So I think it's just going to be, I think it's like the next step in technology, particularly computing, and how it's going to integrate to the world. I don't think I think it's inevitable. In fact, people talk about it like it's nothing and like it's going to go away. I don't think that's the case at all.
So it sounds like generally we have a consensus on cryptocurrency and whatnot. I do have one question I'd like to ask.
Sounds like we have a mass agreement.
Yeah, we have mass disagreements, man. I disagree with Brento.
We have a consensus on disagreeing.
Okay, well
to
then I
disagree,
will
the ultimate
button my
center.
lip right back up again, and I'll let you guys get into it, and I'll save my question for later on. But man,
No,
oh man,
no,
I
actually-
think it's a good one.
No, I would
do
like to hear a question. I want to hear a question.
No, I'm gonna wait. You guys.
Well,
can
we just
sit here and talk
disagree. I
about
mean-
crypto
We
a
just
little bit
I don't
more.
think we're gonna get progress much
Yeah.
further until you get a prodding
Okay,
question.
so again, with cryptocurrency, we have all of these different varieties of currency. Even with all of these different nationalities, we have all of these different currencies being used in each individual country. And again, I keep going back to the question of what about when one of these individual things fails? Would it be preferable if there was one unified currency, whether it is a digital currency like the Bitcoin, or if every country in the world were trading giant gold coins or some facsimile thereof? Would it be beneficial to all of society if there was a unified,
No.
verified, singular currency, or do you
No.
think that it's preferential to be a variety of different things, even if this potentially means harm to the whole if one individual commodity or currency fails?
I think it's exactly the reverse of that. I think the more you centralize the monetary value of things into a single currency, the more vulnerable you are to the failure of that one thing. It's just putting all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, and
You
I
want
mean,
to
people,
diversify your portfolio, so to say.
like if go ahead.
No, please. I interrupted you the first time. I want you to have this one.
I was just going to say, I mean, if a country is concerned about their institutional validity, then they usually peg their currency to the US dollar. We see that in the Forex market. Frequently, if you're thinking about other currencies, obviously there are very few countries on earth that use other countries' currencies. When they do, there's usually some historical tie between them. For example, like the New Zealand dollar and the Pitcairn Islands. Like, obviously, that can't exist without the New Zealand dollar. It would make no sense to run it off any other currency. The history of the francs and those being like the West African franc versus like the Central African franc. Like, there's a historic element to those currencies that are baked in, and generally having one centralized currency, as was highlighted, leaves you open to market manipulation, leaves you open to mass interference by other parties if they're trying to like hyperinflate or deflate the monetary system for some type of benefit, and having it all tied to one particular market might lead to institutional powers being centralized in the country that we choose. Let's pick the United States because that's going to be the dollar that's chosen.
Okay, so I'm largely going to go in the more unitary camp when it comes to the currency on this one for a couple of reasons. Number one, the reason that money exists actually is because it exists to be a common pool of value that is tradable, where you can't just trade. Let's say you're a cobbler, you make shoes. You can't trade everyone's shoes, right? You want an intermediary product that can be used by anyone and everyone. That is the role that money fills. And that's actually one of the big reasons I have an issue with cryptocurrency. There's too goddamn many of them. As much as we like to talk about how we have like the Japanese yen and the Chinese yuan and the American dollar and the Mexican peso, the world economy is largely run off the U.S. dollar. 90% of all trade, or it might be even 95, is run off in foreign trade, or foreign trades are actually done in dollars. Everyone literally goes, all right, I'm going to trade my Thai baht for dollars, and then those dollars go to rubles for the final sale. Everything's done through the dollar. The reason for that overall is that when it comes to the layman, when it comes to the ease of use for people, they want one currency because it means that you can trade from anyone to everyone without having an intermediary step that gets in your way. The problem that comes with is what these guys have actually brought up. If your currency fails, you're screwed. There's a little bit of an issue I have with that in regards that if you're banking on the currency failing, you're kind of banking on a civilizational collapse. We call those people preppers. And I'm not saying that as a joke or as a stab. I'm seriously saying that money is so important that if your currency goes to crap, if it absolutely implodes or goes through hyperinflation or whatever, your civilization breaks down. You've got bigger problems than, oh, hey, is my money still good? You're basically trying to get food on the table at that point. So when basically for me is that if you're banking on currency going to hell, your value just doesn't exist anymore because you can't exchange the intermediary value of whatever the hell you're storing. So I'm actually in the other camp compared to most people.
Sorry, I just want to ask a question. Who's saying that like they're banking on the money collapsing? I'm misunderstanding something here. Like who's banking on like? Do you mean in crypto wise or like more largely?
Okay, so this might have been a bit of an extrapolation because it was referred to the having eggs in one basket conversation. It's not that I openly disagree with that. Is that if you're looking at finance or currency and you're like, man, I need to have different currencies because if my dollars go to shit one day, at least I'll have like euros or yen or something that'll hold value. In an investment sense, absolutely makes sense. But in a actual economic feasibility sense, it doesn't. Because when a currency collapses, it's not one group of folks having a bad hair day. It's an entire nation state going to shit. And one of the reasons that I kind of look at crypto in a more negative light is that when one of them does go to hell, there's so few people losing it that not everyone loses their shirt. If it ever gets that size, I will absolutely bow my hands before crypto as a new revolutionary currency. I just don't think it's going to get there, but that's a whole other conversation because I didn't get to two things that I really see problematic with it.
I do want to counter the concept of like saying somebody that's betting against a currency is a prepper. I mean, we've seen hedge funds base their entire value on that evil preparation, and it happens frequently. Obviously, people like Soros made most of their money off the Deutschmark failing. I mean, currencies have to be able to fail. That is kind of, if we were going to look at a process of how currencies work, if a nation is not handling their money, then usually there's going to be a hyperinflation or deflation that results in destabilization of that particular market, and then there's going to be a recategorization of which dollar value they're going to use. Obviously, places like European Union have stabilized using something like the euro, but like a lot of the time, people use things like currencies as a mechanism to bet against. If we're talking about like NFTs, for example, or even the art market, like that is something that people have been trying to use to like outpace the S&P 500 because it's a great mechanism to invest against. I agree with you that like if we're betting on a complete country collapse, then I guess we're like ghoulish. But that's kind of how a lot of markets are based, is waiting for a bubble and then betting on that bubble before it pops.
I can't openly say you're wrong on that one. The problem that I'll raise there is that, if you will, the majority of institutions are built to, or basically to mobilize on growth, not degrowth. So there are going to be people that basically smell money in the collapse. Like there are people who made money during the 2008 housing crisis because they saw it coming and they rigged up the system, or not themselves. They rigged up themselves so that when the system finally did bust, they walked away millionaires, right? So people will do that. That's great. I guess. The other side of that is when you're talking about something as large as a currency, holy crap, man, that's a whole nother level of scale. You're talking about people who like can't pay their mortgages, can't get food. That's just for me. It's just basically you're. I don't like to use the term too big to fail, but if your currency failed, like holy shit. Um, I hope we have an understanding. I don't dissuade anything that you said. I think that you have like from an investment point of view, you've hit it down right. It's just for me looking at it from the grand scale of stuff. If you're looking for a currency to fail, someone is going to have a really bad day.
I don't. I don't think the currency would have to entirely fail, though, right? Like, you could just soften the impact of a devaluation of the currency, even if it doesn't completely fail, and right?
It depends. Sometimes we've seen governments try to soften impacts all the time.
Yeah.
Basically, I'm sorry.
Sorry,
Just
Tiberius.
appreciate it. I'll let you go here in just a second. Basically, the Turkish lira for the last 20 years has been an exercise in trying to maintain a currency that is incredibly erratic and unstable and trying to soften that impact on the users and make it where people still want to use that currency. That's been the story of the last 2 decades if you're looking at currency. I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, and Venezuela. I mean, basically like continuous government policy to try to match like the or curb the level of inflation. They do a lot of like price control, price fixing, stuff like that, which never really ends up working because they essentially lock in like the I don't know like the supermarket or whatever like it's selling a certain product for this amount, which with hyperinflation or inflation going out ends up being at a loss, so that kind of leads to shortages, and shortages leads to a lot of bad situations. Um, but
But those situations would
it
probably be even worse if there were not also like backup currencies and like foreign currencies, for example, that they could use in place of their own devaluing currency, right?
well, yeah, and that was the problem in Venezuela too, because they restricted people economically to try to prevent people from buying U.S. dollars to use as savings. They made it illegal for people to buy U.S. dollars to kind of maintain the currency and the Venezuelan bolivar.
Right.
That
So
was my. Oh, go ahead.
Which was going through inflation, which made it so people lost all their money from inflation eating it up. I mean, it was basically just setting people up to fucking fail, unless they had like were able to pull the strings to get money out of the country or get money like I don't know in like what's one of those like island paradises like Aruba or whatever.
Mirage? Is that what you mean? Mirage?
Sure, yeah, Mirage. I don't know, one of those.
I mean, and that's part of my problem when it comes to like restrictions on currency seem to generally be one of the downfalls when you're dealing with like cross-border trade. And so when you're looking at like a country that has hyperinflation or deflation, you're going to see either the countries like restricting trade around it through like an element of brinksmanship, or you're going to see like other countries trying to in the region rally and lobby behind it to support them. If we're talking about like the Turkish lira, like the rebound that they had a while back where it went up 24% was all based on like Qatar making a like $15 billion investment because they're trying to preserve the region. So I think when it comes to currencies, you're usually seeing other countries trying to like back up and support the currency so there isn't that mass fallout of an entire country's system. And whether that succeeds or not comes down to how bad everybody wants something to succeed. So I guess if you were going to tie everything to the US dollar, everybody would be in the same basket. So they would have a really hard interest in it succeeding. But I think that would lead to all of the corruption and all of the questions you'd have about market manipulation of that money and everybody being fine with, having that kleptocracy and those higher ups as long as the dollar is preserved and everybody can have bread.
Well, what's interesting is when it fails, it goes to U.S. dollars anyway. I mean that's a situation in Venezuela after the currency failed and collapsed. That ended up being like the lay of the land, just because so many people had enough family overseas where they were able to send U.S. dollars back, and then the government basically ended up being like, "Ah, fuck it, we can't like control this," and sort of liberalized that aspect of the economy. But it's only, I mean, that's just like I guess law of supply and demand. I don't know, like that's just like what's going to happen economically.
Yeah.
It's what works. It's what's best for people. It's a huge ideological L for them, to have their currency replaced by literally Washington and stuff like that, when it was previously like Venezuela and like very patriotic figures, because they were like very nationalist and stuff. That's probably, they would have saved a lot of people from going through inflation and hyperinflation. Did what Ecuador did and swapped to US dollars voluntarily or early on, and integrated like officially and started liberalizing more earlier, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, you're probably right. I guess, yeah, it's the cost, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I guess the only thing I was thinking about currencies collapsing is that there's market manipulation. They can also just attack your currency. Other nations can just attack your currency. They can crash your economy, attack your currency, and remove it from the world market if you're not doing what they want. Or even independent actors. I think there's like a famous thing. I can't remember what the name is. Of George Soros, the billionaire.
The
He did
Deutschmarks,
something. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was. Sorry, you know more about it than me. What were you saying?
No, I was just saying that was the Deutschmark deflation.
Oh,
Like he basically bet down against the currency, tanking it against the rest of the market. And you
yeah.
can do that. You can do that on steroids if you do like the computer trading, like the trading where it's like
Oh
millions
yeah.
of nanoseconds. There was this guy in Britain that full on like started a very illegal trade series where the market dropped like 1,300 points and rebounded within 30 minutes. Like some crazy, massive, like everybody swarmed his hat. Like it was a like, and that's what you can do if you can affect markets in that way. Is like, so it's prime for cyber attacks in the future. It's just whether or not, and that might be the support for your crypto argument. If you have something that stabilizes and monitors where a particular trade is at a particular time, and you don't have to worry about like the market shutting down and reopening, etc., and everything is mapped, then maybe you'd have less of those type of attacks that could completely destabilize a country.
Yeah. That is actually one thing about crypto. I mean, it is revolutionary in the sense it's 24 hours constant. It's just constant, right? The markets aren't down. No one's going home on the weekend. It's just happening all the time. And that's not happening with other markets and currencies. So
I want to actually piggyback off of that and say most of the pros that Brento is going on is I actually agree with. The problem is I think that's why it's our cryptocurrency in the majority is going to die. The vast majority of governments do not like cryptocurrency, and I'm serious. They don't like cryptocurrency, and I think I've said that one of two things was eventually going to happen that was going to be the end of cryptocurrency. One, it was going to get so big that governments were going to look at them or look at cryptocurrencies saying, we're losing a shitload of tax revenue. We have got to do something about it. The United States this year, for the first time, started ringing that bell. So I'm already like in the yellow zone of saying, all right, the attention is now on. The other thing that would happen is either a nefarious state or organized crime would get their hands on cryptocurrency in a big way to where they were using that to fund illicit activities, whether it be drug trade, homicide, any of that stuff. There's always been that happening since the get-go, but it was never a big enough deal where anyone really was going to kick the alarm bell on it because there's still a lot more people involved. With Russia in the situation that it is in now, that game's changed a little bit. Now, I don't know if the Russians have been able to acquire cryptocurrency in any kind of mass form to try to get around some of these issues that they've been dealing with. But if they do, I guarantee you, whatever currency that they're using, the American government is going to have on their top hit list. I think the days are actually numbered because it's too useful, actually, that governments are just going to start targeting it because it's a threat to them.
Okay, now
Okay,
here's a question
well,
here.
okay, go ahead.
Do people here think, let's say if crypto has a bit of an accident, a bit of an oopsie, do you think it's going to absolutely crash, or do you think it's going to flatline? Do you think it's going to die, or do you think it's just going to be heavily damaged? Like, do you think people just stop using it at some point, or will it always be like around in a little bit?
I honestly think that 9 out of like 10 of the G10 countries are experimenting with this like digital currency, and I think they're going to try and like undercut the idea of crypto by having their own digital style currency that's controlled through the governments. I think that's what's going to happen. I've seen at least some movement on that and research being done. So I think they're going to copy the Chinese, and they're going to come up with a way to make it seem like it's less state interventionist. But I don't know how much pushback people will have on that.
I keep hearing the same murmurs is that governments are pursuing crypto dollars in the way that either they're going to be backed by their own fiat currencies or they're going to be associated with them to some degree. I don't know where that's going to go because quite honestly, it seems like a step extra. The one that really was getting my attention was that you were going to have massive conglomerate banks were going to have a shared cryptocurrency that was just for them, that they could move finances between anything for, and you could dodge all the tax overhead, you could dodge all of the basically all of the intermediary steps to where it's just like, hey, I need to wire $100 million over to Belgium. Done. That was getting a lot of traction. And if there's anywhere that I see cryptocurrency really blowing up, it's there. The problem that I kind of get with is actually to the question that you asked. If cryptocurrency takes an oopsie, and the problem is I don't have solid data on this one because you're not supposed to be able to track it that well, is that if cryptocurrency has an oops, and it's just more what I said in the regards that it's more of a Ponzi scheme in the way that there's more and more people buying into it, but they're not using it for a normalized economic ends, which is buying and selling goods and services, then it will absolutely crash to zero. If people are using it for buying goods and services, yeah, it could lose 90, even 95% of its value, but it will rebound because people need to use it and they can use it. That's the entire reason money has a purpose.
It does that every 4 years. It loses 95%. Every 4 years, it falls 80%. It does. It just would fucking.
I was gonna say, I swear I've seen Bitcoin have like 3 crashes in my life.
Yeah, you're like, if it falls 90%, it's like that's like clockwork. But I mean, the thing is, like, to say this idea that I don't know, it's like, well, governments aren't going to allow it to happen. It's like what cryptocurrency does is the way it functions. It's not cryptocurrency necessarily. It's blockchain. Is it allows people to interact without an intermediary, like things that we've relied on and needed an intermediary to regulate and manage before, because there needed to be a centralization of trust. You can perform in crypto without an intermediary, so it's frictionless. It's removing unnecessary things. Like, it's like getting rid of the envelope and the stamp, and now you can send an email. You can interact and you can send information and you can make transactions with people who you will never meet across the globe. And that's not just financial, that's like information, that's games, it's all sorts of things. And you can just do this now, and it's trustless, and you don't need centralized organizations with server farms and passwords and companies. So much of what was necessary in technology is just, it's baked in. It's in it's how the technology works. And so this idea that, like, well, the governments aren't going to allow it. It's like, whatever government does allow it and lets that kind of innovation flourish is going to be the richest, most powerful, technologically advanced company or country. And like, so I think whoever fights it the most is going to lose, and whoever embraces it and does it, in a responsible and intelligent way will win. The reason they don't like it is because all of the systems that that we currently have, they require that intermediary, and wherever that intermediary exists, that's where the government can be involved and can extract taxes and regulations. So they just need to learn how to basically monetize it and allow it to work. But its value is that it doesn't require so many moving parts that are expensive and that slow it down. That's the revolution, and they just have to learn how to use that. And anyone who doesn't, I think, is screwed.
Yeah, but I have to ask this because I feel like we're kind of focusing a little too much on crypto rather than something that I think is slightly more important, is the whole physical cash thing. Like, how much of this is just going to be improved by going away from physical cash, and how much of it do we really need in crypto rather than just innovations in, like, removing the sort of physical side of cash? Because I believe that I just keep seeing that everywhere, like cashless shit. Oh, we only take card. We don't have cash here. People fearmonger about it, but like, that's the big thing. Do we need crypto when we're going to go away from physical? That's my main thing.
I mean, my grandparents were the old school, sew gold into their clothes types, legitimately. So there's always going to be mass fear about the next generation of anything. When I was doing research for this currency thing, I went down the rabbit hole of, do you all know about like the British like shilling, halfpenny, pence? Like originally their whole system was base 12, base 20, like
Oh my god.
for no reason.
Yes,
It didn't benefit anyone. It slowed everybody down. You had to do like massive amounts of math to buy anything. People had to have a bunch of different currencies that made no sense.
To be fair, this was when like stuff was worth a lot less. To be fair, I mean it was still stupid, but this is when things could actually be bought for like pounds and like hundreds of pounds rather than like.
True, but like imagine being like, oh, this is £3 and I gotta add £4 and 12 shillings and oh shit.
No, I'm not saying it's not stupid. I'm just saying it made more sense.
They fought decimalization so hard, and then my favorite part was when I was reading about this. The people that were fighting miles per hour and switching it to kilometers on the road, and there's like old people that at one point were like taping. They were taping miles per hour over the kilometers per hour on the fucking street signs because people just don't trust. Like they don't know how to do new shit. So I assume
you know why?
It's still happening.
French. They were all that stuff came from France, all the decimalized systems, and this is why they didn't want to adopt it in Britain.
You know it's still happening, Franklin. Though I think there was some like legislation in the UK where it's like there used to be a thing that there's thing where you had to have things. I forget which one's the imperial or metric, but the one that's commonly used like everywhere, pretty much.
Metric, yeah.
And there used to be a law that you had to have things in metric, but for some reason we just abolished that recently for like our trading standards. So now we don't have to have things in metric. It's not a legal requirement anymore. Zero fucking clue why we did that, but
people just pick the parts of the like the closeness to America determines how much you use the imperial system anyway. Like we use pounds here still. Nobody's like, oh, I'm 52 kilograms. Like no, that nobody does that. Nobody says I'm 180 like 6 centimeters. That's weird.
Can you tell me why you guys
people.
use Fahrenheit though? Can you tell me about that? That's the one thing I don't get.
Oh yeah, Fahrenheit's dumb.
Fahrenheit is dumb. Honestly, as an American, I actually am going to say it. Almost all of the metric system is just definitively better. I'm 100% supporting that. The problem is that it seems to me is that everyone's trying to get more towards the imperial system because the Brits have kind of accepted their fate that they're going to be an American client state. Good job, Britain. I guess Britannia no longer rules the waves, but hey, whatever.
No, there's a whole lot of stuff around Brexit which would probably argue with that, whether I agree with that or not. Like, we're going through a very weird time culturally, man. Fucking UK is trying to do 6 different things and none of them are working. But
welcome to the Western world. Do you all have an idea? Yeah. Is it the same idea? No. Okay, we're in political quagmire. Great.
What the heck is going on?
Nothing. Because no one can agree on shit.
Fucking Brexit I like how Brexit was confirmed. Like, I don't know much about it, but I like how it was confirmed, right? Everyone voted on it, and then it took like 2 years to like put in place, and it fucking confuses me, man. Like, it was the whole, like, everyone in the UK was confused what was happening with that. Like, regardless of what side you're on, it's like, is it happening now?
Yeah, it was a mess. It was absolutely
fucking like a blizzard announcement day, where it's like fucking the announcement for the announcement of Brexit. It's like, mate, what the fuck's happening here? Can we have the dates?
Is anybody gonna argue for like some Star Trek no currency, full on mutual aid shit? I want some crazy arguments. Come on.
What about sex coin?
Oh,
so I will introduce like my revolutionary concept again. A couple of us are Twitch streamers. I really think that there's only one currency anymore. It has to do with ad media and the fact that all of these different apps and programs and games, they all want us to be involved in whatever it is that they have going on at any particular moment. And I think really, honestly, the only currency that any of us can afford to pay anymore is attention. So please pay attention to me when I talk. But until then, you guys can have your turn.
Sorry, what? Could you repeat that? Hey,
rejected your currency.
Subscribe.
I never listen to myself.
I want to point something out here. speaking about attention currency, ignoring chat, I did see what your mug said. Very clever. Very clever. What you wrote on the bottom of your mug.
Oh,
Show him again. Show him again.
So just to get into Franklin real quick, because I'm a huge Star Trek fan, I'm not gonna advocate for any like Star Trek based society because I've had this
Be
conversation.
too equal.
Well, number one, yeah, actually, but here's the breakdown. The economics of Star Trek are based in something that is antithetical to modern economics, and that is scarcity is pretty much gone. In the Star Trek universe, you have replicators. You literally can turn your shit into the thing you're going to eat next. So you don't have to worry about basically, producing stuff. Energy is rapidly abundant because they have freaking antimatter reactors, right?
I feel like
So
there's a billion plot holes in it. Like I feel like this,
it's got it's a sci-fi universe, right? It's up in the air. But what I'm
it has
extrapolating
plot
here.
holes in. It's not up in the air. It just has plot holes in. That's
Sure.
fucking like
Yeah.
hand waving and fucking every
Anyway.
sci-fi thing.
People talk about like what the economics of Star Trek is, and there's actually three. Number one is that there is rationing within the Star Trek universe because there's a few things that you can't replicate. In the Federation itself, is that it is, or if you can't replicate it, it's rationed. So the Federation government literally comes in and tells you, we'll get you this amount of replicators at this point, done. If you are out of the periphery, or out in the periphery, like you're watching DS9 or whatever, you're basically back into normal economics because not everyone has access to the nice, wonderful things. And then going back to the social credit thing that you guys were talking about before I jumped in, is that the primary economic system within the Federation on a day-to-day basis where you don't have scarcity is the economics of pride. And I'm dead serious. It is, you have a social credit within the Federation that what are you doing? Who are you? How are you participating in making the Federation better? And that's your social credit. That is what makes up who you are within that. So whether you're talking about Cisco's, who makes the some of the best food in New Orleans, or whether you're talking about the Chateau Picard and making some of the best wine, that is what their credit is. It doesn't mean that they'll ever go without food. But it does mean that if anyone is going to take you seriously, you have to be doing something to contribute, and that's their way of doing it. So it's kind of cool, but it's completely like farcical in our modern setting by far. So
I love myself some Star Trek, and man, oh man, they did have some sort of an interesting system. Replicators make an interesting thing when you're able to convert like energy, which you have to produce somehow, into like a matter of some sort. And there is like a difficulty in the first series about obtaining these dilithium crystal thingies that they keep using to like make all of the energy. And then by the time we get to Deep Space Nine, they've got like this gold pressed latinum that is like some sort of a liquid encased inside of a golden like capsule of some. I don't even know, but man, oh man, there seems to be currency even in the post-scarcity far future sometimes.
I mean, that's a series of plot holes. So in the first couple series, they had energy credits, and there's frequent references to buying things, and we're not sure if they actually purchase things or if they have like some kind of like some amount that they get through their military service that they can like trade in for X, Y, or Z. Like there's no clarification on that. It goes away. The gold pressed latinum is traded by the Ferengi, who have a capitalist style society, but like dialed up to 1,000. And all of their rules are based on currency acquisition. So yeah, I mean it's just every ideology tinged up to 1,000. And written by someone who is not really familiar with the outcomes, just playing with the sliders.
I wish that we had someone here that knew something more about military requisition and the way that combat deployments are allocated based upon the individual preferences of individual leaders, because in a military society, people don't have to actually like pay their soldiers to choose where they're going to put them or anything. There's just like money that moves around. I wonder how that all gets handled. But gee willikers, nobody's joined the show waiting room with any significant military experience specifically in regard to allocation. But then again, maybe I have someone here.
Is this about to be like
No.
the Austin theme?
I was gonna say, like,
I've got something while we're still on the fictional currency thing. Has anyone else here seen Mr. Robot?
no.
I have.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Mr. Robot's got that whole fucking. I kind of find it interesting. I think the show's got more interesting stuff going on than this, but I still think this is interesting enough to bring up. It's the whole like corporations owning currency thing, which is not really something that we've talked about here yet. Which is sort of like the idea that a company has a sort of like crypto kind of thing going on with like eCoin in the show, and that's like a kind of background thing. But does any company right now own like a successful cryptocurrency? Like,
do video game currencies count? Because you could say like League of Legends has.
What about the Disney dollar or the company store from day of old when you would be paid in worker script?
oh fuck, that fuck shit.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, my soul to the company store.
Can I interest any of
I like-
you in some worker script, by the way?
I'm good.
No,
Sounds wonderful.
I think I'm
Great
alright.
exchange rates at the moment.
I got two things real quick. Number one is that, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a Central American country that actually bought like 5% of a major cryptocurrency. I'm thinking it was Bitcoin. I'm thinking it was Guatemala.
This is Salvador, I think.
Was it Salvador or El Salvador? I don't remember which one it was, but I know there was, and they were experimenting, and they dropped like $100 million US into cryptocurrency, and trying to play with that and making it a normal thing for them. I'm really interested to see how that develops out. I haven't heard really anything since the announcement, so if anyone wants to update me on that one, feel free. The other thing, the military procurement thing, I don't know if that was a plug at somebody, but I do know a little bit about that. Whether we're talking, if you want to go old history, Rome is a really interesting example of this, whether you're talking about the pre- and post-Marian reforms, where pre-Marian, the Roman soldier equipped himself, versus post-Marian is that the Roman general equipped his soldiers. Or if you're talking about the United States today, I'm sorry, I'm having a small stroke right now because that is one of the most convoluted processes out there. Like the Venn diagram for that, the flow chart is absolutely insane. But what I can tell you is that it all breaks down into two criteria. The United States government, or I'm sorry, the United States Department of Defense has two criteria in regards to if you're going to put a new piece of equipment into the field. One is battle need. Do you actually need this equipment? Is it going to help you win the fight? The other is battle worthiness. Can it actually stand up to the rigors of combat? If you qualify for those two, you will probably get your piece of equipment within 3 to 10 years.
So, no, the reason that I brought this up is, again, we were talking about post-scarcity societies and various currencies that might get brought up in these like different situations throughout history. Like, for example, in the Mayan empires, we believe that they traded cacao as their like basic currency, which essentially was something that was ground up, turned into a liquid that had an effect similar to various narcotics that are made from similar plants nowadays as well. It must have tasted like chocolate, again, based on the plants that these things are made from. And we've seen situations in various other places where people have traded other goods and services. The reason that I brought up military requisition is because, again, like, you have to feed your soldiers, you have to like move your soldiers, but within the chain of command, there's not so much like, okay, one of my lieutenants says we want to go here and do this. How much is that going to cost the military for them to go and do that? There's just an allocation of how things are handed out. And this, again, it kind of comes back to a social currency sort of thing, where if you have enough credit to say, hey, I want to go and do this, okay, we're going to give you millions of dollars worth of troops to go in a direction that you think is appropriate. And I think that I was trying to come back to Starfleet in that regard, because you have one Captain Kirk driving a whole, how much did the Starship Enterprise cost with all of those payrolls? Oh, wait, we don't have any money. We'll forget about all that. But there is an individual like with a bunch of capital behind them in the form of a capital ship. And in the sense of a military operation, there's someone also with a lot of capital behind them in the form of all of these individuals. Sorry, excuse me.
I hate to derail, but if this is true, this might be the craziest thing I've read today. President Bukele of El Salvador has announced plans for a new city, Bitcoin City, to be built at the foot of a volcano that will provide geothermal energy and power a giant Bitcoin mine.
Let's go.
That's some evil villain shit. That's not your
You know
regular
what I'm
shit.
thinking of?
I
You know
like
what
it.
you know what I immediately think of putting something at the bottom of a volcano? Pompeii.
Yep.
We're not going to learn from Pompeii. We're not gonna, like, yes, let's put our like nice beach hut right on the sand, and let's build all of our structural support on sand right by the beach. I
it.
wonder what could happen.
If it makes you if it makes you feel any better, the city that's on the other side of Vesuvius that got wiped out, or that Pompeii wiped out, is called Naples, and it's still there. So yeah, we didn't learn shit.
No, it's built on the other side though. It's okay. I'm sure there's something.
Nothing
I'm sure
could
there's some
possibly go wrong. Hey,
Yeah.
hey, Seattle, there is this thing called Mount Rainier right next to you. You know,
Nah, Seattle will be fine.
Yeah.
Enumclaw's got to worry about that.
Does Pompeii just? This is going to sound like a really dumb question, but does Pompeii exist like still? Like, did people live in Pompeii now? Did they move the houses back? Like, is there someone like with a house like living in Pompeii?
they
Like, just
actually,
chilling?
believe it or not, they actually weren't excavated until the 1900s.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, Kit Harington was
Lordy.
there for a while preparing for a role, but other than that, no.
Is there
Wow.
like burnt pizzas there? Like, well, not exactly pizza, but is there
Pink
like
Floyd
food that's
played
like
there.
burnt? Pink
Coming
Floyd
back
played
to
in
money.
Pompeii.
Yeah, coming back to money.
Oh shit, they're still alive, so they didn't get burnt. Good.
Yeah, just so you know, Tiberius, Seattle is about 100 miles away from Mount Rainier.
Okay, Tacoma.
No, Tacoma's about not so far.
Like literally, if Rainier goes off, that river that goes right through the southern end of Tacoma will flood because of
Oh
the
yeah,
water.
But
all
surely,
the valleys are fucked. Yeah.
surely Naples is further away from the volcano than Pompeii is. Surely.
I originally it wasn't that that far. I can look into it a little bit, but
I assume they all moved when Pompeii happened. They were like, let's use our heads here, lads. Let's not get ourselves in some volcano messiness.
No,
Let's
Naples
move
is
away a
kind of
little
like
bit.
it's kind of like right next to the Vesuvius.
Did they move closer? They were just like, nah.
Nah,
It happened twice.
Happened
We
twice,
know this.
exactly.
You guys
What
need to
happened twice?
remember that we're sure that everything will be fine as long as we don't upset the fire god.
Oh,
yeah, Vulcan is kind of a dick. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie there.
Nobody talks about Fire Nation invading, but like serious threat out there.
Oh yeah, and then we got tsunamis
Underrated
as well.
threat.
Tsunamis are underrated threats. No one thinks about the tsunamis.
We've begun memeing. Currency. What? Somebody? Any more questions?
We're gonna keep memeing.
You're a
That's what we're gonna
storm
do.
of
No,
Bitcoin,
it's
a storm
quite all
of
right.
currency.
I bring myself around every once in a while just to make sure that we have enough levity in the situation to make sure that we don't get too caught up, particularly on the really boring topics.
I try not
Now-
to be too shit posty. I do genuinely try and like have serious conversations, but the problem is I am a chaos agent at my core. So
Now, hear me out, okay? It's called Batcoin, and it's forever.
Oh my god.
You know, the Grand Exchange, when it was implemented into RuneScape, really regulated the and shifted the economy of the world in a very radical way.
Why do you do
I
this?
would like
Implemented
to
a
draw
stock
us
market.
back to the center of this. I don't mind talking about RuneScape coins. I don't mind talking about World of Warcraft gold, and I don't mind talking about paying laborers to generate the stuff so that we can sell it to people, because I'm sure that someone's still buying it somewhere, for goodness sakes. My question originally was about currency and what exactly it is. It does appear to be some way that we attribute value to individuals based upon their ability to generate it as quickly as possible and then retain it, and then be able to supply it to other people. We were talking about one unified currency at some point, but I'm still not 100% sure what the intrinsic, central, inherent value of what currency actually is. So is it like a social metric of like how good we are at getting all of the junk, or what?
Well,
I just
no,
want to make a point here.
it's a measurement of trust between people. It's a promise. It's the value of a promise between two people. Yes, that's what it is. And
Okay.
it's used as a record of memory. And the reason you know that is because if someone says, "Hey, we made an agreement. It's written on this piece of paper, and we're both going to honor it." And then if someone says, "Well, I'm not going to honor it," then it's worthless, right? It only represents what people agree. It represents an agreement. So it's trust.
It doesn't
Okay,
require
trust?
endorsement as
Yes,
a
it's
medium of
trust.
exchange as well.
Well, the endorsement is the agreement. That's the trust.
All right, I'll jump in on this one. So
Trust and endorsement.
there's a problem here. Number one, in the modern world, there's like 4 different types of currency. You have commodity currency. This is what used to be gold coins, silver coins, that kind of thing. That was basically, you had a currency, it was minted in something that was really easy to use, but it was based upon the commodity that it was. That's gold, silver, pretty much any precious metal that you could think of. That's what was really common through most of history. In the later years, we tried representative currency where it's like, hey, we have your nice gold, but it's in a bank vault. Here's a piece of paper that says that we owe you that gold if you ever want it back, but you can trade it, at ease or where you're going. The third iteration is, of course, fiat currency. This is literally currency that is backed by its own debt that it's supposed to be used by its own government. I know that's a little convoluted, but it tends to work. And I can kind of explain that overall. And then fourth is actually probably cryptocurrency. The problem, getting back to the fiat though, is that there is now 3 different intellectual camps on people thinking what the currency is, what it's supposed to do, and how it's supposed to work. You may have heard this term modern monetary theory. That is an entire school of thought about what you can do with currency and how it's supposed to work. We're kind of literally trying to lab research this as we go, so it's fun.
I literally think modern monetary theory is a fucking lie. It's obviously.
I'm not gonna.
It doesn't
get
matter if
into
people
that.
use it. And it doesn't matter if it works for his amount of time. It's just bullshit. But yeah.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna go down there because that's a whole other conversation. What I will say is this: in all currencies, there is one thing that is inherently true with all of them, and that is it is an intermediary step of engagement. And what I mean by that is that it is, instead of being able to trade and barter to where you're just like, hey, give me this thing for that thing, it's give me that thing for money. It always comes down to the money because as an exchange good, it is universally accepted. So that it's not necessarily there to store the value, it's there to move value. And that is what actually gives money its value, ironically enough. There is a conversation within those 3 camps that if you decided to take a fiat currency and no longer back it by anything, not debt, not an IOU, not anything, would it still actually have a value? The answer is probably yes, solely out of the fact that it's useful, that you are going to take that currency and get goods and services with it. And that, in a nutshell, is why money exists in at least some form or another, is that instead of going through all the hoops of organizing trade from one thing to another so that everybody's happy, it's that happy intermediate product that everyone can use and is happy with.
Yeah, I think liquidity is very important when we think of, the state's ability to enforce a particular outcome, when we think about lawsuits, when we think about like how you exchange, like how you create, for example, asset-backed debts to other people and how you make those trades. You're on paper saying X is worth Y. Because X is worth Y, you want to engage in this behavior. And when we're setting up a debt, you are going to owe more of X than Y is worth over time in order to get this up front. So everybody obviously privileges liquidity now, but they want the ability to invest, to have long-term asset accumulation. So I think it's both. It is a representation that your money will be worth the same or more or less over time, and it is also the ability to trade and barter quickly so that you don't have all of these intermediary steps of selling a home or selling your cow or having to carry around a bunch of Chinese knives.
Very good. Again, interesting. Currency, the ability to transfer things between people and have a level of trust between them.
Question.
Does this sound appropriate?
I'll largely go with that.
Yeah.
Myself
got a
has a
question.
question.
Okay, question myself.
If what does money not buy? I'm curious what people think money can't buy here, because there's a lot of
Anything
things that I
that's
think
not
money
a-
can buy. But
Anything that doesn't come from human behavior.
okay,
Anything that doesn't come from human behavior can't be bought by money, right? It like the really all that money can get for you is it can get someone to give you something or do something for you, and anything that doesn't that isn't a human behavior or doesn't come from a human behavior, that there's money can't get that for you.
pretty
I
succinct.
think
Now,
it can give you like a certain level of comfort. I guess like human behavior, like deriving from yourself, in that
Yeah.
scenario. But
At a certain point, it can't buy time.
peace of mind.
You could have all the money in the world, but if you run out of time, that's over.
Yeah,
So
we can buy you medical treatment or something like that, or you know, like
that's what I said. At a certain point,
yeah.
But
but
anything that can't be exchanged.
that's a good point. Well, I'm trying to think of things that couldn't be exchanged, but I guess sort of what I'm alluding to is how much. This is the classic question I like to think about, but how much can money actually buy happiness? So I think we almost believe at some point the money has influence over happiness. I think that's kind of unignorable. But like, how much does money have like a positive impact on money? Like, how to use it. Money can buy lots of good things, but also you can waste money and get very despaired by it. So it's sort of. What do you guys think about that? Money in relation to happiness?
God.
I think it's like up to a point it does, but so I think from what I've seen, I haven't looked at this recently, but I remember there have been studies on this in the past, and from what I've seen was that basically being in poverty lowers your level of happiness, but once you get up to kind of a middle class medium level in the context of whatever society you're in, getting rich above that point seems to result in little or no additional happiness beyond that. It's just like a matter of having your basic needs met is strongly correlated with happiness.
I kind of mean it more in a subjective sense, though, as in terms of what do you think, in terms of what you should put your money towards generally? For me, I think living space is really important rather than a lot of other things. I think that is something that people should put more, I almost should put more money towards in terms of living, and then tech. I think is quite important. It sounds like a weird thing, but if you think past the living stuff, for example, I'm having so many fucking issues with that technology, even with an improved setup, and it's just, I don't know. In terms of your opinion, what do you think you should put your money towards in terms of what makes you happy money wise? Do you want loads of good food, or is it something a bit more stability or savings or?
The first thing you need to buy when you have money is a good bed. If there's one thing you don't want to skimp on is a comfy mattress.
And you spend 1/3 of your life there. So why
Use
not?
code ignoring chat.
Hey, there it is.
Felix mattress.
Oh my god.
You got that mattress money?
I wish, dude.
Just keeping all your money in the mattress?
That is what it sounds like he's
I
doing.
should.
So if I come to your house, I am flipping over the mattress and I'm going to take all your money. And then
You'll
leave.
find my Bitcoin password and a note under my mattress.
Yeah, I think.
But I'll be in ruins anyway because it's in Bitcoin.
So I work in family law and sometimes in estate planning. And I think that people care about their family. People care about retirement. They care about the idea of scarcity and what will happen if they run out of money. If you're dealing with people that are street involved, homeless people, they're concerned with how will they get the money to fulfill the next thing that they need to do. If you're dealing with even a gamer, it's how am I going to get money so I can play games? I need to keep the lights on. I need my tech to continue to work. And then outside of that, people just neutral out. So yeah, it's maintaining stability is the greatest thing that you can get with money. If you're stable, then you can make choices. You have the ability to decide what you're going to do that day. If you don't have money, then you might have to worry about how am I going to pay for this cancer treatment? I don't know.
That's a very American thing to say.
Like, being very materialistic and trying to own a lot of stuff is not going to make you happy.
I don't know about that. Like, I don't think that'd make me happy, but I feel like there's a certain level of like collectors and stuff like that spend a lot of money on collections and junk, and I feel like there's definitely a certain kind of person that just having more and more money actually makes happy. Like, not unfortunately.
I feel like if
a bit
it's
harder for
something
me,
meaningful to you, like collecting something that is like, I don't know, if you were like really into, I don't know, I know people like collect Transformers, stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, like if there's some
I think is
dickhead,
cool.
that had like 500 bow ties or something, fuck that guy. That would be really stupid.
I'm not really convinced.
I admire a good bow tie collection.
I'm not really convinced that people who do that are actually more happy by having a better collection. I think it's just the activity of collecting that they might enjoy. It's not just the fact.
No, but then you can't. Yeah, but then you can't have like 500 bow ties, and you can't properly engage in the activity if you don't have money.
Any Red Dead Online players here?
No.
Like, clearly, money here advances the collection process.
It does, but I think advancing the collection process is not what's making them happy. I think it's merely participating in the collection process.
But if someone's but you clearly need a certain level of money, right? You can't just be like, oh, I want to be a bow tie collector. Oh yeah, I'm homeless though. Like, you might be able to find one or two on the street, but it's like there's a certain level of like, you know what I mean? There's a certain level of
They're
money
not great
that
bow tie
helps.
collectors.
Yeah, exactly.
But like, this is the thing that I was saying earlier about once it gets to the point where you've got your basic needs met, where you're no longer that homeless person, where you just like have some security and some time and space to do activities that you like to do, then I think like being rich beyond that is gonna provide
but let's
you
take that
little
to let's take this is why I don't like studies, because I feel like they kind of put you into sort of one mindset. So let's say spaceship. This is a big thing, right? I'm not that into it, but there clearly people are. So space travel, right? Now, if you want to get into space travel and that's your life's passion, you're not going to be able to do that unless you're fucking rich.
Mm-hmm.
Like, really. So, and people who are clearly very into space travel, you know, all these big tech billionaires and shit, they're the people that are actually being able to send people up to space and all that kind of bullshit. Clearly, those people, I know this is somewhat of an exception, but clearly these people are able, with their extreme material wealth and their sort of like organization skills, are going to be the ones benefiting from the amount of money. And there clearly is definitely areas and hobbies where having a lot of money fucking helps. Same with loads of expensive cars and stuff.
The money can help you succeed at the hobby, but it's not clear to me that the success is tied to their happiness.
I don't know, but isn't like I feel like there's definitely a level of success that makes, like, obviously if you were like completely unsuccessful at something, and you're not necessarily going to be unhappy, but if you keep failing and keep failing, it's going to be hard to be happy than if you succeeded every once in a while. Do you know what I mean? And then if you've got this sort of like research team, even if you're not necessarily successful, you've got all these people, all this effort, all this progress. Like, clearly it's going to be, if you've got a good head on you, clearly this is going to be helpful for, like, you're going to feel like you're this pioneer of this like new technology. Clearly you're going to feel important. You're going to have more self-worth.
Isn't that like legacy though? Like, isn't that more like the things that you're buying out of the thing? Like, I agree with Cricket. It isn't that you have a lot of money. It's what you did with that money and whether you valued it or not, or whether society valued it or not.
Yeah, but then you still have to have the chicken with the egg. You know what I mean? You still have to have that money to begin with.
Yeah, but like, obviously it's like making the best of what you have, I think, can make you happy.
Yeah, definitely. But what I'm saying is it's something like, how do I put this? I think human happiness is something that's like very relative. Like, I don't really have that, and I wouldn't be happier in that position, and I'm making do what I have with my brain. But I feel like with the reason why you get these like tech billionaires and stuff is I don't think they wouldn't be happy living other lives. Like, they just wouldn't be happy living a life where they didn't try and do all this dumb bullshit. Like,
do you think they are happy by virtue of being a billionaire? Because I don't think so.
I think they're happier. I don't think they're happy always. I think they're happier. Because otherwise, they wouldn't try and become billionaires if they didn't if they felt like there was a better option. Do you know what I mean?
If they were like completely content. If it depends on what you mean by happiness.
Yeah, they're clearly not.
If you're-
They're clearly not like content people because they're clearly trying and striving further and further. But it's what I'm.
Naturally.
But no,
Please.
but do you see my point though? Because it's like
Yeah.
I don't think they would be if they didn't put any effort into it at all. I think they would be more unhappy because I feel like they've just got a different personality. It's
Well,
this
some people. Go ahead.
It's this just. I mean, I wasn't going to say too much more, but it's just sort of this empire personality type, and I feel like a lot of us definitely have a different perspective to what they have, and I don't know what it is that exactly drives them, but clearly it's something else that makes them happy by having a lot of money.
Some people achieve wealth or success or get a lot of money by pursuing their passions and their interests and making that the singular focus of their life, and money is secondary.
Yeah.
Right? And that can be something that gives them purpose. And I think like achieving your purposes and or achieving, a purpose and following your passion and doing good things for others, I think all of those things lead to great success. Depending on what they are. Maybe you want to be a great painter, but no one likes your paintings, but you're happy anyway. So no, I don't think that anyone who's extremely wealthy or successful is inherently deprived of something, or unhappy or feeling like they need to fill a void. But many are, and some people that can be the case too. Yeah, so no, I don't think so. And as far as I feel like the general question is more like what makes you happy or what makes people happy, right? And I mean, you could say lots of different things make people happy, but I don't think that's kind of true on like a surface level. But I think people ultimately are all looking for something inherently like that that they feel like they need, some kind of contentment or acceptance or love or purpose in a way.
Yeah, like if you're having good relationships with other people and you're contributing to your community and you feel like you're living up to your values, that kind of stuff I think can make you happy. Just like having a bunch of stuff is just not on that list, I think.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying it's like that is one of the steps though, and it's like it's not what's making you happy, but it's that sort of like the ladder almost, right? They're clearly trying to get to clearly climbing the ladder and doing other stuff related to it is what's making them happy, but there's the
So I don't want to cut you off too much myself, but a lot of people in chat do want to contribute to the conversation at this point. What I'd like to do is I'd like to wrap up our conversation on money if we can. I'd like to give everybody an opportunity to shout themselves out, give their closing statements and their position on where they are. And then I'd like to jump down to the live room, which the public has access to, and we can continue our conversation on happiness. If you guys in the chat out there want to join the Discord and get into the conversation, the live room can hold a grand total of 16 of us. And we're going to talk about, various things having to do with happiness in general in there. But again, on the topic of money, I'd like it if everybody here would like to give their final stances on what a currency is, whether or not it would be a good thing if we all move to a singular unified currency, and if we can ever exist in a society without a currency at all. We started at the bottom last time. I think maybe we'll start at the top this time. Brento, if you'd like to share with us.
Sure, thank you. Like I was saying, I think money and currency are implicitly what they represent is trust, and they represent trust because they represent essentially like a debt or a promise carried over time. Because if everything was immediate, then there would be no need for any kind of a currency to carry any sort of transaction, right? So it has to be about a transaction, and it has to be, and things like liquidity, things like I don't know, the different forms of money, they're all just providing the same service. They might do it in different ways, and so we call them different, but ultimately their intrinsic value is that we recognize them as a reliable source of carrying value and as an exchange between people, and there's lots of different ways that can occur, but that's what they do. So
thank you very much. I really do appreciate you being here, Brento. Absolutely fantastic to hear from you. I appreciate your perspective on the topic. I really tend to have a hard time disagreeing with you on a lot of different things, but every once in a while we get to have a really interesting conversation, as we do so often.
Thank you for the invite.
Hearing from you again. Cricket, please, if you'd like to shout yourself out and give your final closing statement and position here.
So yeah, sure. I'm Cricket Style J on Twitch and Discord. I think a lot of us have given kind of different descriptions of what money is that sound like maybe they should conflict, but I don't really think any of them are wrong. I think they're all just kind of like different angles of approaching the same problem, and I think what everybody has said about what money is all pretty reasonable. I mean, basically, my take on it is that it's a common medium of exchange that's durable and highly divisible, and because it's so useful because it is durable and highly divisible in a way that a lot of barter products are not. Therefore, it's often just a better medium of exchange than bartering is by itself, and I think that's why we have it. But I also think the trust thing is right. I think like a lot of the other things that people have said about the currency are right. As far as like, do we want a single unified currency? Not if it's at the exclusion of all other currencies. I'm okay with having like a primary currency that we mostly use, and then just having some on the back burner just in case. Yeah, I think that's about all I got.
Again, Cricket Style Jay, we've had you here before. I look forward to having you here again. You're absolutely fantastic. Thank you for sharing your perspective with us in this regard. Again, great to hear from you. Look forward to hearing from you again. And look forward to catching your content over on your channel, particularly with Flow Trace, my favorite, authoritarian llama. Franklin.
So yeah, I would say that money is the undoing of the Tower of Babel. It can be used as a unifying metric, and it seems like the currencies that we like reduce the amount of effort necessary to translate that currency. So the simplest thing usually seems to be the best. Across, I know that Tiberius was arguing for that like unitary form of a currency. I think it might be similar to language in that you can move towards more unitary languages, and there'll be some vestiges of history that stop that from fully occurring. But that is the intent, is to unify everybody's ability to communicate. I think when it comes to how we look at monetary systems, it is the mechanism of trust that's everybody has kind of talked about, but also like the ability to deal with your property, to alienate it, to be able to dispose of it, to get value for it, to be able to go to a government source or some other mechanism if you are deprived of it in an unlawful manner. I think that was some of the issue with crypto and the concerns dealing with the criminal element. If someone can engage in a criminal behavior and just stop your ability to trade, then you've restricted that person, and they can no longer be able to exchange goods and get any benefit, and you've deprived them of what we consider some element of fairness in exchange. So yeah, I'm Franklin and Slash. I talk about why the law is terrifying, usually because it has a lot of negative effects on people, but sometimes there's good things that come out of institutions as well. You can check out my channel. Usually I stream when I'm talking to people on these panels, but I also like to do weird streams. I recently did an e-date with M60 for Jesus. So I'll probably do some more ridiculous content like that. I know I love doing that stuff too. So come check me out at Franklin and Slash.
Franklin, again, fantastic to have you here. Again, it's always good to have, so to speak, the adult in the room that actually knows what they're talking about, particularly in the legal sense. And always good to have someone else on here that makes me feel like I'm not overdressed. So frankly, sir, wonderful to see you. Look forward to seeing you again in the near future. Ignoring chat. Thank you very much.
Hello. Yes, I think money is very good. Money is shall I say, it's a gas. Grab that cash with both hands and make a stash. You need to accrue as much money as you can to get ahead in life. That is kind of the practical reality of where we're at. Generally, it will give you like peace of mind, and we've evolved to the point in society where currency and legal tender like that facilitates international trade and commerce. And we use the dollar as the world reserve currency. And so far, I think we should try to stick to that and do more trade agreements and focus on reducing inequality going forth. You can find me on Ignoring Chat and everything. I shitpost a lot on Twitter if you're into that sort of thing. I made a new Twitter account. It's AI shitposting. I think I'm gonna do like program or something that runs stuff through the new AI image generations thing. I think that's kind of fun. It's kind of zany. I do kind of zany content on my Twitch. Give me a follow. I'm Venezuelan.
I love it. I love it, particularly the I'm Venezuelan tagline, because of course everybody needs to make sure that they have a diverse perspective in their Twitch politics consumption and also in their memes for that matter. Ignoring Chat, I love the artwork that you create as far as your stream in general. I'm not particularly talking about your drawings, though those are great too. But I look forward to spending more time with you, doing more things with you. When are you going to do more of your game show, my friend? I need to see more of that.
Oh boy, yeah. So I'm gonna get those shows back up and running. I was doing a little course that's been eating up a lot of my free time, but for sure, let's get them started. I already got the people in mind, got the team in mind for the next one. Mythic for sure. I want to loop in. We'll have to do it at a time where he can connect. I think over the weekend.
You
My
also
plan's
might need
but
to switch
I'll
to
keep you in
YouTube if
touch.
that's the case. I think that he's
Yes.
isolated to that
Yes.
location at the time. So
That's
Ignoring
true.
Chat on YouTube. Don't forget that one, guys.
Yes, that's true. A lot of old videos there. I got old videos. Lego stop motion I'm talking. It's embarrassing. Don't go there. Don't look. Hee.
Ignoring Chat, thank you again for being here. Really do appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you again. Tiberius, if you don't mind.
All right. So, as far as my thoughts on money, I think I'm gonna largely just gonna have to parrot our good friend Franklin here. He laid out where I'm largely out of money. It's a excuse me, it's a used to facilitate trade is basically what it does. So I don't need to reiterate that. As far as if we want a unitary thing, he hit that pretty well too. So I don't need to hit that. So I'm going to take that moment just to go. If you don't know who I am, my name is Tiberius D. I studied in economics, political science, and my claim to fame is talking about geopolitics. Basically, how the study of place and things dictate your economic fortunes, because it actually has a lot to do with it. The next video I'm going to be doing here on my channel is probably going to be about how stagflation has returned to the United States and how a big deal that is. So if you're interested in that, if you're interested in me going off and being a big nerd and talking about how Commander Riker is actually a really cool character, all of it is on the YouTube channel. Please go subscribe. I really would appreciate it. And by the way, if you are a wonderful person here in the chat that I don't know yet, I probably may have sent you an invite to the Discord server. So if I like you, you will have that waiting in your inbox. I really appreciate you all for having me here. It was a fun, engaging conversation. Somebody, just give me a little more heads up next time. But until next time, I really appreciate you having me on, and we'll have to see you soon.
I do apologize again, Tiberius. I hate to say it. I was on the never-ending quest to find someone that was actually a devout, flag-waving communist, so to speak. And man, oh man, I couldn't find any that were willing to come on here and talk about what money actually is or how any of it actually works. I can't figure out why that may have been, but I do appreciate you coming in and filling in at the last moment to make sure that we were at least on the right track in all of the regards. I do need to get in communication with you, not only about my next topic, which we'll discuss that later on, but about other possible future endeavors, because frankly, Tiberius, you make some fantastic takes from time to time to time to time, and they're wonderful. You're a wonderful individual, my friend. Thank you again for coming and being here.
Thank you so much. I feel the air flushing into my head right now. I mean, we got to deflate this hot air balloon. I got to be honest. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you again for being here. Everybody out there, make sure you go and follow Tiberius D. He puts out some, like I say, fantastic content that you guys should all be checking out, because I enjoy checking it out myself. Speaking of myself, would you like to let everybody know exactly who you are, as opposed to me?
Well, I'll finish up the money discussion with, I think money is something that it's basically a language, and it's fucking complicated, and I don't think any of us will ever be able to fully understand it because it changes way too fucking often. But then we've tried to discuss it generally and all this stuff, and I think we've done our best to sort of discuss money as trust and other stuff, blah blah blah. And although I don't think there should be one singular currency, because I think competition's good economics wise. But as for the rest of it, it's been good speaking to you guys. I don't really give a shit if you check out my channel or not. I am on it. I am on YouTube, but I mean, I'm just here to fucking hang out. Diogenes a Twitch or whatever, you know. I don't know if that makes any sense, but you know what I mean? I'm just sort of like, I need to fucking battle against people and bring people down a peg from being too egotistical. And I wasn't as argumentative as I would have liked on the stream, but it's still cool to hang out. So it's cool hanging out with you bozos, you know.
All right, myself. I'll have to find you a more contentious topic to come back
No,
and
I
have
did.
a
I just
conversation
wasn't
with
brave
us on.
enough to argue against people because I feel like some people spoke for too long. But I think that's a bit harsh because I like speaking a lot, so as well.
So myself, again, I do look forward to having you on again and having another conversation with you. Since you're not plugging yourself and not worried about whether people check out your YouTube, you should go and check out my YouTube, Somebody Online, because I did an interview with myself at one point, and we talked about irony and humor and all of the different variations and meditations and tried to figure out what it is that the kids are doing today and figure out whether or not I knew what the hell I was talking about. And frankly, I don't know if we ever came to any good consensus on that. With that, folks, I'm going to move myself into the live chat room here in the Discord to give the folks out there the opportunity to come and say what they want to say. I think we were talking about happiness. And again, myself, if you'd like to try to come to any conclusion on what that may or may not be, I encourage you to come and join us in the live chat room just up that way in the Discord. For the rest of you guys out there in the Twitch chat space, come and join the Discord, as a matter of fact. !Discord in the chat or DS. And then, hit the link. Come on in, join, and do the thing. We'll have a chat. Don't, we'll have a fun time. Thank you guys all for being here. I'll see you all down there in a moment, I suppose.
We'll do the thing.
Good speaking to you.
I gotta take off. Y'all have a good one.
Yeah,
Peace.
I've got to go to bed soon. I'm gonna mute myself in the open chat for a bit. But yeah.
All right.
Peace.
See ya. I'm gonna jump. See you guys.
Bye.
Welcome in, Cricket Style Jay. Thank you for being here, friend.
Yeah.
Here, let me pop the chat back out so we can actually see everybody that's here as they get here, because that's an important facet of streaming on Twitch.
Let me just double check. Is it okay that if I'm streaming this, because I wasn't sure if you were going to allow people to come in without being on stream?
Okay, so I'm constantly streaming. You guys are welcome to be streaming or not be streaming. And Cricket Style Jay, just so you know, I always want you to be streaming on your channel when you're on my channel, because the more places that the broadcast is running, the more variations of the individual stream there are, the more individuals are watching the thing in various places, the bigger the footprint of everybody's content altogether. So please don't ever not stream if you're talking to me.
Okay, I'm unreliable about doing that, but I've got a whole 2 viewers right now, so here I'm bringing them with me.
Well, friend Tiberius just raided into me. I'm going to assume that he may or may not be joining me at this point. But man, oh man, thank you very much, Tiberius D, for joining us. And for those of you that are out there that came from Tiberius D, do me a favor, hit !DS or !Discord, jump into the live room and come and have a conversation with us. We were going to talk about happiness, but I don't see myself. Wait, I do see myself, but I don't see that individual named myself at the moment to see if we wanted to discuss happiness. But how are the rest of you individuals doing this fine, whatever time it is?
I'm just dandy. Thanks for asking.
Fandabulous one.
I'm doing good. If you're gonna be on for a while, I might come back. I think I'm gonna dip out and take a quick break, and then maybe hop back in.
That sounds perfectly appropriate, friend Brento.
Okay.
I encourage you to do so. We'll see you in a moment.
Thanks for hosting. It was fun. See you in a bit.
Fandabulous. So, monetary policy. Juan, let me ask you, my friend, the money that you use in exchange within your current region, do you primarily hold, shall we say, I don't know, what do they trade wherever you are? Do you care to let me know?
Sure. I'll clue you in. We use the Argentine peso over here. It's kind of wacky. It's like a whole dollar, but it's a peso. But generally pretty high inflation. So credit ratings are super high, super kind of ludicrous. So people generally avoid paying stuff with interests because that can get kind of crazy quickly with like 40% inflation a year.
Holy
So people are
Hannah.
encouraged to spend, because otherwise that money's just a hole in your pocket.
Very interesting, very interesting. But one Argentine peso, you say, at the moment is relative to about $1?
200 Argentine pesos are $1.
Okay, very well.
4 years ago when I emigrated here, it was around 35.
Very interesting. And because of this, do you keep your, shall we call it savings, if such a thing exists, or like your retirement fund or whatever? Do you keep any money not in Argentine pesos, or do you keep any money in any other form of currency?
Yeah, well, I had a little bit in Bitcoin. Not since the crash. I took that money out a long time ago, but I had a little bit in US dollars. I mean, some like what I get paid with Twitch now, I just keep that in the PayPal when I don't spend it. But generally try to keep stuff in dollars so I don't need to bring it into pesos.
Very
And
interesting.
use credit cards.
Very interesting. And Cricket, I know that you're more in North America. Do you have any foreign currencies or commodities or anything that you are retaining for their intrinsic value, or that you're trading for their monetary value?
Nope. I do not.
Perfect. Yeah, understandable. Understandable. Pretty Franklin, I'm asking the concept because Juan is in, a not North American location. I was asking him if he had any currencies that were not in his local currency that he was retaining for, monetary benefit or trading purposes or anything like that. And I don't know,
I feel like people only go for cryptos and stuff like that here because they don't have access to like the stock markets and stuff like that, because that stuff seems like more you know I would prefer to be able to trade in that, like the stock market and stuff like that. I feel like there's more possibilities, more stability there than cryptocurrencies, which could just tank at any fucking moment. So it's kind of like people in South America use them as a more so because it's like the only kind of avenue to make something from nothing, or from very little, since there's a lower barrier of entry to trade with it.
that makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, I imagine that before cryptocurrency existed, there were other things potentially that people traded. I also know of like various people that baseball cards, stamps, old coins, old Disneyland things, people that collect various stuff for prosperity's sake, or to hopefully see it go up in value in the future and things like that. Do you guys have any thoughts on these sorts of concepts?
I mean, like once you get into the speculation markets, like and specifically something like that, it's all about your knowledge base on a particular commodity. So obviously, if you're thinking like people that collect comic books, for example, they have a knowledge of what is valuable, why it's valuable. Usually, it's mistakes or things that are printed in limited supply. Limited supply is always going to increase the amount. But yeah, there's more creative ways that people are kind of sharing I guess sharing the interest of some of those things. Like I've noticed there's a lot of like pop-ups that are like investing in like large art markets. So there's like some online stuff that people invest in for like that bought the portrait of Marilyn Monroe by Andy Warhol. So yeah, I'm seeing more and more investments from like kind of like open sourcing it to the community. I worry the more speculation you have by non-traditional investors, and this is going to sound classist as shit, but usually that's the siren call that like the SEC starts to get worried, and then there is a huge tank
I mean, like
on the market.
the GME situation.
Yep. That's kind of the concern is, once people don't exactly know what's going on, and they're blind a bit. Although I mean, I guess the counterpoint was when I was doing research in law school, there was the analysis of what happened with like the Russian when they departed from paying back their debts, and there was like this one of the biggest hedge funds lost billions of dollars because the two currencies just didn't match up and went sideways. And there were two Nobel economists that had set up this hedge fund, and it completely tanked because when people don't behave in the way that people predict with markets, things can just go haywire. And yeah, I guess that fits in our stability narrative. If people behave in normal ways, then things are predictable. When people behave in completely unexpected ways, that's when people start to suck on the currency front.
Howdy, howdy, howdy.
Oh, welcome in, Quack Quack. Pleasure seeing you here. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good, thank you.
Welcome to the stream. We are live, of course. We're talking about money and various alternative currencies and speculative investments and various things that people tend to put their money into at various times with hope that they might be worth something later on. We talked about stocks and bitcoins, that sort of thing. Any personal opinion on money, currency, or anything that we talked about on the show so far? If not, that's entirely all right. I do thank you for joining us today. That does make a lot of sense what you're saying, Franklin. Like a lot of times when we get into this space, we are talking about a lot of, like you say, speculation. A lot of people are hoping to know what they're doing, and the people that know what they're talking about and know what they're doing will probably do the best in those markets because they know the particular things to invest in. There is this interesting phenomenon that seems to occur where, like, the people that start rating video games are the first people to sell video games, and there's this thing that happens in the art market where art becomes worth money right before it gets sold for more money, and then it doesn't get sold for a number of years, and then it's weird how all of this stuff works. Financial markets are an interesting thing.
I would like to talk briefly about what I learned in a microfinance class, which is pretty important because it establishes a lot of problems with the current economic system. See, a lot of the current economic system relies on a bank. You have to go to a bank to cash out a check and to store money. To a lot of people, that seems innocuous, but for a lot of people around the world, they don't have access to that, you know? And so the big thing I'm really interested in cryptocurrency being is a way to transmit money without all these fees that are attached with foreign banks and all this other stuff. This is especially true in areas that have a large, it has a large, what do you call it, system of telecommunications network. You know, it's like, I believe it was either Nigeria or another nation that had a large network of telecommunications that basically allowed them to have cryptocurrency on their phones, which basically allowed, like, I need to look this up in a moment, but it basically allowed them to have a better boost in the cryptocurrency market.
Yeah, that is relatively true. I've seen different signs of that at various times from a lot of different places with different cryptocurrencies. We talked a little bit about like the pump and dump thing that does appear to be occurring in cryptocurrencies in various places. What's your thought on cryptocurrency as a whole, for example, with what's going on with the good old Bitcoin at the moment?
Personally,
Any Bitcoin fans? Go ahead.
Personally, I am very skeptical that it's going to last. It could have been a good innovation for most people, but it fell too short too soon.
So you think that Bitcoin is over as a whole for the most part?
It's not a panacea, and it's not over, but it's not a panacea. It's not going to solve the world's problems.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes perfect sense. It's hard to disagree with that concept. So the other topic that came up that myself was discussing briefly was the correlation between money and happiness. Where did we get to with that? Does having enough money make you happy, or does at some point it just top off and that's enough money? We don't need any more of that.
I mean, the second one is my opinion.
I think partly, I obviously agree that like there's only so much happiness you can derive from money, but I do think that like restrictions on people creates their own like unhappiness, I guess. So if if you put someone within X bracket and then tell them they're not doing as well as someone else, that seems to be what breeds the unhappiness. I didn't want to like attack Tiberius with this, but like I do think that there's an interesting dynamic when you think about like the tribalism of family and the idea of like I need to provide for my family. My family need to be secure. I need to make sure that the next generation has money. I need to make sure that like I am completely insulating myself and everybody around me, and everybody else can go fuck themselves. Because that's that at that point I'm like, well, you're not really a meritocracy if you're planning for your great grandkids' future, if your great grandkids aren't shit. And that's kind of the idea of like the family business and the interesting stuff they do in Japan, where you'll just straight up adopt in the most successful person in your company into your family so they can continue their family business, quote unquote.
Hey, Toby.
What's up?
What's up? You a big cryptocurrency fan, Toby?
Actually, I am.
Sheesh.
Sheesh.
Yeah, the
What's your favorite
Bitcoin.
part? What's your favorite crypto?
I don't really have a favorite crypto. I'm just a fan in general because it decentralizes
Enthusiast.
money.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean it's here to stay. It's going mainstream right now. We've got what Lehman Marcus and the other big
crypto
firms are
stadium.
selling it. Yeah, it's selling it to their clients openly and stuff. So that's moving in. It's been around. It's crossed the 10-year hump as
It's
well
going to be
too.
on the next GTA.
Yeah, I mean it's wild. Like Bitcoin itself is up and down like crazy, and you don't know what's happening. So there's that going on still.
I thought it was pretty funny. I had a something. Well, I can't explain anything more, but I have observed that this comes up in wills where people try to limit what people can invest in, and you're not allowed to do that. But I've heard a lot of requests generally to limit people's ability to invest in cryptocurrency because they're worried that their grandkids are gonna blow all their money. And I think that's an interesting idea. Is like, at what point should you be trying to restrain other people's investments? Obviously, when we were talking about El Salvador, the IMF was trying to move in and say, like, please do not keep trying to run your currency on cryptocurrency. It's not stable. We're worried about your country falling apart. And it's hard to tell if they're doing that for their own selfish means or more likely because they don't like the instability in the markets.
I mean, Switzerland is going more and more pro Bitcoin as well too, so it's stepping into the game. The other There's a few other countries that are going as well too. So how big it will get, I'm not really sure, but yeah, it's here to stay definitely.
I feel like you're doing an anonymous FBI interview.
Yes,
I'm not
you
sure.
are protecting your identity at the moment, Toby. You might need to unplug the USB on your camera and plug it back in. There's a variety of reasons that's happened, I've noticed. Thank you very much for being here, by the way. And folks, it is an open panel, !Discord. We are in the live room. Those of you that are in the open chat down below, if you'd like to come and share your opinions on any of this stuff, please come and join us. We'll hopefully have him back here just in a quick moment. Yeah, it is an interesting thing. There's a number of people that think that like different professions like banking and trading in stocks and things like that, gaining profit by the manipulation of currency is, we're going to say, less than ethical in a variety of different ways. I don't know necessarily if I agree with that. I think that it's kind of like a byproduct of capitalism as a whole. And I think that it's something that is generally always going to happen as a result of the way that investment in corporations and business ventures and in various things that people potentially put trust in, as Brento Box was mentioning on the panel. We attribute value to these things in hopes that these things become more valuable in the future in a variety of ways.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, like if you think about like, have you ever heard about like the Indian cobra market? Like they were paying people to kill cobras, so then people started farming cobras.
Jesus.
Oh, I
Yeah,
heard a
and I mean-
similar story with rats, and
Yeah.
I heard it was Vietnamese rats, but who knows? Maybe these are both true.
It honestly could be a variety. I've definitely heard the Indian cobras because it came up. I believe this was 7 years ago on a Freakonomics podcast, if I'm going to give my sources. So yeah, I mean, what happens is if people can figure out either a way to save money. So when they instituted, was it Brazil that had the requirements on driving and like your license plates? There was definitely a South American country that limited which license plate could drive, so people would buy 2 vehicles and drive them half the time as a mechanism to get around that.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what
I'd have to find it for you guys, but the point seems to be that if there's a way to save money, if there's a way to get around a certain regulation, people will find that exploitation hole. And I think the same thing is true of currencies. People will find the way to exploit the approximate value of something because individuals are less concerned with institutional stability unless it's part of their job.
So we have to be careful
mean,
what
the-
incentives we set up, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you got the FX, people trading currencies back and forth and making shit tons of money as well too. They're basically just following the banks and kind of set the rules and kind of control things a little bit. Like Canada's currency, Canadian government really keeps a tight lid on it and controlling it and its value as well. But other countries not so much. My favorite thing is derivatives. Who the hell came up with that?
Someone that's a betting man. I love when you can bet on like, well, the weather might ruin my day tomorrow, so I'll set up an economic system to recover in if the event that the weather screws up my business. Like
Just
that level
gambling.
of betting is great. No, I mean I love it's insurance in the open market. It's next level, and I was gonna bring up wasn't to do a derivative. It was dark pools. Does anybody familiar
Oh.
with the concept of like the
Yes.
off trading from the market and
That
whether
sounds
people
like
trust
such an
those?
inherently sketchy name. Like they
I mean,
named it
it.
Dark
Yeah.
Pools.
Yeah, I ran into dark pools about 2 years ago.
That's one of my favorite superheroes. I don't like the Marvel or the DC. I do, the Image comics and Darkpool. He's great. Anyway, no, what were you saying though? Ignoring Franklin, I'm sorry.
I was just saying that like dark pools are an interesting concept because it's someone who does not fully trust the market and setting up their own system to deal with trades, either because they don't trust the nano trading that's going on. Like there's the AX in Toronto that deals with like preventing that nano trading, and like it's designed basically to allow like 1-for-1 trades to stop market manipulation through the computers. But then there's also like dark pools that are basically set up as like, this is slightly off the grid and it's kind of regulated, and like a lot of the time you're not having like securities forums checking it, and you're not really sure what regulatory force they have and whether they're going to do a raid on it. So like it gets into that realm of like, this is regulated, but you're not sure if the fines are going to stop people from behaving in a certain way.
Okay, yeah, with the dark pools, it's important to mention too that I think that it's institutional investing a lot that drives that, where they're kind of doing it after hours and um, prearranged prices type of thing, so that they get their money's worth, so to speak.
Yeah, and we definitely should have. I don't think we really got to like, currency fixing and like that, like the Plaza Accord. I know if you want to check out a good small video, Econoboy did something on that, and the idea of like the states frequently will say like, oh, well, China, they're engaging in currency manipulation. They're engaging in currency manipulation, and there's a very clear like the Plaza Accord was like just trying to screw up like the Japanese yuan and the Deutschmark at the time, and it was like very clearly orchestrated, and you could look at the history of it. So it's always interesting when people engage in a behavior and then call out other people for it.
Well, I mean, the dark pools are legal if we're
Mhm.
talking about the institutional investing. It's just that they do huge blocks of it, and it's not very transparent what's really happening. They don't really have to. Yeah, it's a little behind the scenes type of thing, and they get a much better rate as well too for their investors.
Yeah, and you'll see a lot of think tanks back them as an important new mechanism. So it's always interesting where the think tanks will go.
Yes, yes, the rich will continue to make their money. Never fear.
That's for sure.
So, I suppose that when we're talking about commodities, we can also talk about like betting on losses and the idea of shorts, the idea of bonds, and things like that. Another
Oh
interesting
yes.
concept is like, at what point do these things devolve completely into gambling, and can we just like create a slot machine so we can find out about the payout a little bit quicker? But we'll get there later on. But no, bonds and again, insurance was brought up for a little bit, which again is a very, very important asset that people need to consider how to verify their assets, turn into assets anyway. Man, oh man, bonds though. Bonds. They're an interesting way that people deal with the potential of losses.
Yeah, bonds. Didn't we go into like negative rates on bonds during pandemic or something? I can't remember. I know Germany, German banks, some German banks, if you had less than like 100 million or over 100 million, you had like negative interest rates going on as well too. But bonds usually are stable, backed by a government or something large, and pay a low rate for that.